The fire on the Morrison ranch burned for 3 days. Ethan Vance stood on his porch at dawn, watching the black smoke curl into the sky 15 miles east. His coffee had gone cold in his hand. He didn't drink it, just stood there, still as the weathered fence post that lined his property, his eyes tracking the smoke like it was telling him something the wind couldn't carry. Behind him, the screen door creaked. "Dad?" He didn't turn. "Go back inside, Lena." His daughter was 16, tall for her age, with her mother's sharp eyes and his own stubborn jaw. She stepped onto the porch anyway, arms crossed against the morning chill. "That's the Morrison place, isn't it?" "Was." "What happened?" Ethan finally looked at her. Lena had her mother's face, but Sarah had never looked at him the way Lena did now, like she was trying to read a book written in a language she didn't speak yet. Sarah had known him, all of him, the parts he'd tried to bury and the parts he wished he could. "Fire," he said. "I can see that." Lena moved to stand beside him, following his gaze. "Third one this month. Second, the Hutchins place wasn't a fire they just left. In the middle of the night, without saying goodbye?" Lena's voice carried an edge he didn't like. Too much knowing, too little childhood left in it. "Dad, people are scared." Ethan set his coffee mug on the porch rail. The wood was rough under his palm, splintered in places he kept meaning to sand down. He'd built this porch with Sarah, back when they still believed Iron Hollow Valley was far enough from everything that mattered. Far enough from the war, from the memories, from the man he used to be. Turned out nowhere was far enough. "Where's your brother?" he asked. "Still sleeping, Dad." "Wake him up. Chores won't do themselves." Lena didn't move. "You're not going to talk about it, are you?" "Nothing to talk about." "Right." She turned and he heard the anger in the way her boots hit the porch boards, because ignoring it worked so well for the Morrisons. The screen door slammed. Ethan winced, not at the sound but at the truth buried in her words. He picked up his coffee, dumped it over the rail, and watched it darken the dry earth below. The land here didn't forgive waste, didn't forgive much of anything. He'd learned that the hard way. The town of Iron Hollow sat in a depression between two ridges, built around a spring that had run clear and cold for as long as anyone could remember. It wasn't much. A general store, a saloon, a church that doubled as a schoolhouse, and maybe 40 buildings total if you counted the ones held together more by hope than by nails. Ethan rode in that afternoon with a list from Lena and a growing knot in his gut that had nothing to do with hunger. Main Street was quieter than it should have been for a Saturday. A few horses tied to posts, a wagon being loaded outside the store, but no children playing in the dust, no women gossiping on the boardwalk. The kind of quiet that came before storms or after funerals. He tied his horse outside Harper's General Store and went in. Margaret Harper looked up from behind the counter and something flickered across her face. Relief, maybe? Or recognition? Hard to tell with Margaret. She'd been running the store since her husband died in the same accident that took Sarah, and in 4 years, Ethan had never seen her smile. "Ethan." "Margaret." He pulled the list from his pocket. "Lena needs some things." She took the paper, scanned it with quick eyes. "I can have this ready in 10 minutes. Coffee's fresh if you want some." "I'm good." "You look tired." "I'm always tired." Margaret's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "Sarah used to say the same thing. Said you'd work yourself into the ground if she didn't make you stop." Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't like when people talked about Sarah. Not because it hurt, though it did, but because they always got her wrong. Made her softer than she was. Gentler, like she'd been some kind of saint instead of a woman who could outshoot most men and wasn't afraid to tell you when you were being a fool. "The Morrison fire," he said, changing the subject. "You hear what started it?" Margaret's hand stilled on a sack of flour. "Depends who you ask." "I'm asking you." She glanced toward the door, then lowered her voice. "Official story is lightning. But there wasn't a storm that night, Ethan. And Jim Morrison, he wouldn't have left that place if he had a choice. He leave or did someone make him? Does it matter? He's gone either way." She started measuring out flour with sharp, precise movements. "They all are. The Hutchins, the Robertsons, the Delacroix family up near the North Ridge. 20 families in 6 months. The only ones left are the people too stubborn or too stupid to see which way the wind's blowing." "Which one am I?" Margaret finally looked at him, really looked at him, and Ethan saw something in her eyes he recognized. The look of someone who'd already lost too much to be surprised by losing more. "You're the dangerous kind, Ethan, the kind that doesn't run." Before he could respond, the door opened. 3 men walked in, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. The first was tall, well-dressed in a way that didn't belong in Iron Hollow. Tailored coat, clean boots, a hat that cost more than most people here made in a month. The second was smaller, wiry, with the look of a clerk or a lawyer. The third was the one that made Ethan's instincts wake up. Big, maybe 6'3", with shoulders that suggested he'd done hard work once but had moved on to harder business. His coat hung open just enough to show the pistol on his hip, worn high and loose. His eyes swept the store with the casual efficiency of someone used to identifying threats. Those eyes landed on Ethan and stayed there. "Gentlemen," Margaret said, her voice carefully neutral, "what can I do for you?" The well-dressed man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "We're looking for property owners in the area. Conducting some surveys, making offers. You wouldn't happen to know who owns the land east of here? The Vance property?" Ethan felt something cold settle in his chest. "That'd be me," he said quietly. The man's smile widened. "Mr. Vance, what a fortunate coincidence. My name is Gerald Stockton, representative of the Iron Valley Development Company. This is my associate, Mr. Webb, and our security consultant, Mr. Cole." The big man, Cole, nodded slightly. His eyes never left Ethan's face. "We've been hoping to speak with you," Stockton continued. "Your property is quite valuable. Strategic location, good water access. We're prepared to make you a very generous offer." "Not interested." Stockton's smile flickered. "You haven't heard the offer yet." "Don't need to. My answer's no." "Mr. Vance, I don't think you understand the opportunity." "I understand fine." Ethan turned back to Margaret. "That order ready?" "Almost." Her hands were shaking slightly as she wrapped the goods. Stockton's voice took on a harder edge. "Mr. Vance, I should mention that most of your neighbors have already accepted our terms. Very generous terms. It would be unfortunate if you found yourself isolated out there." Ethan picked up the wrapped parcels Margaret had set on the counter. "I've been isolated before. I'm still here." He moved toward the door and Cole shifted slightly, blocking his path. Not obviously, not aggressively, but enough. The 2 men stood there, maybe 3 feet apart, and something unspoken passed between them. Cole saw something in Ethan's eyes, something that made him step aside. "We'll be in touch, Mr. Vance, Stockton called as Ethan pushed through the door. One way or another. The ride home took an hour, and Ethan spent it thinking about Cole's eyes. He'd seen eyes like that before. In the war mostly, but sometimes after. Men who'd crossed certain lines and found they didn't mind the crossing. Men who'd learned that violence was just another tool, like a hammer or a plow, and who'd gotten comfortable using it. Cole was dangerous. But Cole had also stepped aside. That meant something. Meant Cole had recognized something too. A mirror maybe, or a warning. Either way, it confirmed what Ethan had already suspected. This wasn't about business. This was about power, and power didn't ask politely more than once. The sun was setting when he reached home, painting the valley in shades of red and gold that would have been beautiful if Ethan had the mind to notice. He didn't. He was too busy scanning the ridgeline, checking the approaches, cataloging the weaknesses in his property's defenses. Old habits. The kind that had kept him alive when alive wasn't a guarantee. Lena met him at the barn. "You were gone a long time." Stopped to talk to Margaret. He handed her the parcels and began unsaddling his horse. "Where's Ben?" "Fixing the fence on the south pasture. He'll be back for dinner." She watched him work, that analyzing look back on her face. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "Dad." He pulled the saddle off, his back to her. "Some men came by the store, asking about the property." "What kind of men?" "The kind that ask now and take later if you don't give them the answer they want." Silence. Then, "What did you tell them?" "No." "And they just accepted that?" Ethan turned to look at his daughter. In the fading light, she looked so much like Sarah it hurt. Same spine, same refusal to look away from hard truths. "No," he said. "They didn't." Lena's hand moved unconsciously to the rifle leaning against the barn wall. Sarah had taught her to shoot when she was 12. Not for sport, not for hunting, but because out here, being able to defend yourself wasn't optional. "What are we going to do?" she asked. Ethan hung the saddle on its rack, checking the leather, the buckles, the way the weight sat. Everything in its place. Everything ready. "We're going to eat dinner," he said. "Then we're going to sleep. And tomorrow, we're going to keep working this land like we always have. And when they come back?" "If they come back?" "Dad, when they come back," he corrected himself, "we'll deal with it then." But they both knew. When, not if. And dealing with it was just another way of saying surviving it. Otam. Ben came home just as the stars were coming out, his hands dirty and his face sunburned. He was 14, built lean and strong from work, with Ethan's dark hair and Sarah's easy laugh. Except he didn't laugh as much anymore. None of them did. Dinner was quiet. Venison stew, bread Lena had baked that morning, water from the well. Simple, filling, the kind of meal that tasted better when you'd earned it with your hands. "Fence is fixed," Ben said between bites, "but the posts on the east side are rotting, going to need to replace them soon." "Make a list," Ethan said. "We'll ride into town next week for supplies." "I can go," Lena offered. "You don't need to." "I'll go." Something in his tone made her stop. Made both of them look at him with that same expression, like they were trying to figure out which version of their father they were talking to. The quiet one who fixed things and never raised his voice, or the one they sometimes glimpsed in unguarded moments, the one who moved differently, watched differently, like he was always calculating distances and angles and threats. "Dad," Ben said slowly, "is something wrong?" Ethan set down his spoon. Outside, the wind was picking up, carrying with it the smell of dust and distance. Somewhere out there, the Morrison Ranch was still burning, still smoking, still sending its black message into the sky. He thought about lying, thought about keeping them safe in their ignorance for one more night. But Sarah wouldn't have lied. Sarah would have told them the truth and trusted them to be strong enough to handle it. "There are people," he said carefully, "who want this land. Not just ours. All of it. The whole valley. They've been pushing families out, making offers that aren't really offers." "The fires," Lena said. It wasn't a question. Ethan nodded. "I think so. Can't prove it, but I'd bet my life on it." "Why?" Ben asked. "What's so special about Iron Hollow?" "Water. The spring feeds every ranch and farm for 50 miles. Whoever controls the water controls everything else." Lena's fork clattered against her plate. "And we're in their way. We're the last piece. Our property sits right above the spring's main source. Without it, their control isn't complete." Silence fell over the table. Outside, a coyote called in the distance, lonely and wild. "So what do we do?" Ben asked. His voice cracked slightly, still caught between boy and man, still figuring out which one he needed to be. Ethan looked at his children, at their mother's eyes staring back at him, waiting for an answer that would either comfort them or prepare them. He chose preparation. "We stay alert. We keep weapons close. We don't go anywhere alone, and we don't trust anyone we don't know." He paused. "And if something happens, if I tell you to run, you run. No arguments, no looking back. You take the horses and you ride to the Donnelly place north of here. Old Frank will help you." "What about you?" Lena's voice was steady, but her hands were white-knuckled around her fork. "I'll be fine." "Dad, I'll be fine," he repeated, and there was something in his voice that shut down argument. Something hard and certain and utterly cold. Ben and Lena exchanged a look. They'd heard that voice before, but never directed at them, never quite so clearly saying, "I have walked through fire and come out the other side, and whatever's coming, I can walk through it again." They didn't know, couldn't know, that Ethan was lying. He wouldn't be fine, but he would keep them safe, even if it cost him everything else. But that night after the children were asleep, Ethan sat on the porch with his rifle across his lap. The valley was quiet. Not peaceful. Quiet. The kind of quiet that made you listen harder, that made every sound sharp and suspect. An owl hunting. Cattle shifting in the pasture. The wind moving through grass that needed cutting. Normal sounds. But Ethan hadn't survived this long by trusting normal. He sat there until midnight, then 1, then 2, watching. Waiting. His body knew this vigil even if he'd tried to forget it. The war had taught him how to be still, how to let his mind go quiet while his senses stayed sharp, how to read the darkness like other men read books. Around 3, he saw them. Riders. 4 of them, moving slow along the eastern ridge, too far away to be a direct threat tonight, but close enough to be scouting, learning, planning. Ethan didn't move, didn't react. Just watched until they disappeared over the ridge, heading south. When they were gone, he allowed himself one long, slow breath. Then he stood, checked the locks, and went inside. In his bedroom, Sarah's bedroom, their bedroom, though he still couldn't think of it that way, he knelt beside the bed and pulled out a long wooden box. He hadn't opened it in 4 years. The lock was stiff but functional. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, were the things he'd promised himself he'd never touch again. A cavalry saber, the blade dark with careful preservation. A pair of revolvers, custom made, balanced for his hands and his hands alone. A leather journal filled with maps, sketches, notes written in a code only he and 3 dead men had understood. And beneath it all, folded carefully, a uniform. Dark blue, worn in places, patched in others. On the collar, tarnished but still visible. The insignia of a scout. Not just any scout. A ghost. That's what they'd called him and the others like him. Men who moved through enemy territory like smoke, gathering intelligence, eliminating targets, disappearing before anyone knew they were there. Men who'd won battles before they were fought and killed enemies who never knew they were dead until it was too late. Men who weren't supposed to exist. Ethan touched the uniform once, lightly, then closed the box and shoved it back under the bed. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But if they came for his children, if they threatened the last thing in this world he had left to protect, then the ghost would wake up, and Iron Hollow Valley would remember why some men should never be pushed. Dawn came cold and gray. Ethan was already up, already dressed, already working when Lena found him in the barn. He was checking the horses, running his hands over their legs, their backs, their hooves, making sure they were sound, healthy, ready. Ready for what? He didn't say. Didn't sleep much, did you? Lena asked. Enough. Dad, if you're worried... I'm always worried. It's what keeps us alive. He moved to the next horse, a gray mare Sarah had named Smoke. The horse nickered and pushed her nose into his palm. You and Ben stick close to the house today. No wandering. It's Saturday. Ben was going to check the traps on the North Ridge. Not today. Dad, not today, Lena. She crossed her arms, frustration flickering across her face, but she nodded. She knew better than to push when he used that tone. The day passed slowly. Ethan found busy work, mending tack, sharpening tools, reinforcing the barn door. Small things that needed doing, but mostly served to keep his hands occupied and his mind from racing too far ahead. Around noon, Ben joined him. They worked in companionable silence for a while, the rhythm of shared labor settling between them. Can I ask you something? Ben said eventually. Depends on the question. Mom used to say you did important work during the war, that you helped a lot of people. He paused, measuring his words. But she never said what kind of work. Ethan's hand stilled on the bridle he was oiling. Your mother talked too much. She said you saved lives. I did. By killing people? The question hung in the air between them. Ethan set down the bridle and looked at his son, really looked at him. 14 years old and already understanding that sometimes the world forced choices with no good answers. Yes, Ethan said simply, by killing people. Ben absorbed this. Did it bother you? Every time. But you did it anyway. Because the alternative was worse. Ethan picked up the bridle again, his fingers working the leather with practiced ease. War's not like the stories, Ben. It's not about glory or honor. It's about doing what needs doing and living with what that makes you. And what did it make you? Ethan didn't answer for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost lost beneath the sound of wind through the barn's gaps. Someone your mother could barely recognize when I came home. Someone I didn't want to be anymore. He met Ben's eyes. Someone I'm trying very hard not to become again. Ben nodded slowly. Then, surprising Ethan, he picked up another piece of tack and started working on it, matching his father's rhythm. "If you have to," Ben said, "if you have to be that person again to keep us safe, I think Mom would understand. I think she'd want you to." Ethan's throat tightened. He wanted to tell Ben he was wrong, that Sarah would hate what Ethan had been, what he might have to be again. But that would be a lie. Sarah had known exactly who she married, had looked at all the dark places inside him and decided to stay anyway, had made him promise only one thing, that he'd never let that darkness touch their children. A promise he'd kept, a promise that might be about to break. Tuz. Evening came with bruised clouds and the smell of rain that wouldn't fall. Ethan stood on the porch again, watching the light die over the valley, when he saw the rider. One man, coming from the direction of town, riding hard. Ethan's hand moved to his rifle. Then he recognized the horse, Tom Brennan's chestnut gelding. Tom was a good man, owned a small ranch south of town, had a wife and 3 kids. Not someone who rode hard unless something was wrong. Tom pulled up in front of the house, his horse lathered and breathing hard. "Ethan," he gasped. "Thank God! I wasn't sure you'd—" "What happened?" "Town meeting. Tonight at the church. That Stockton fellow called it. Says he wants to talk to all the property owners about the future of Iron Hollow." Tom's face was pale. "But here's the thing. Sheriff Wade is backing him. Says anyone who doesn't show up is making trouble. Wade's on their payroll." "Yeah, I figured that part out." Tom glanced over his shoulder, like he expected someone to be following him. "Ethan, I don't know what we're supposed to do. Half the town's too scared to say no, the other half's already sold out. If we don't go to this meeting, we go," Ethan said, "but we go careful." Tom sagged with relief. "I was hoping you'd say that. Some of us, we're thinking if we stand together, show a unified front." "Tom." Ethan's voice was gentle but firm. "Unity doesn't mean much when the other side's already decided. They didn't call this meeting to negotiate. They called it to demonstrate power. So what do we do?" Ethan looked past Tom, toward the town, toward the gathering storm he could feel in his bones. "We go," he repeated. "We listen. And we make sure everyone knows we're not the kind of men who scare easy." Tom nodded, straightened in his saddle. "I'll spread the word. Meeting's at 8. See you there?" "I'll be there." As Tom rode away, Lena appeared at Ethan's shoulder. "You're not going alone," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, I am. Dad, someone needs to stay with Ben. Someone I trust." He turned to face her. "That's you, Lena. If this goes bad, if I don't come back by midnight, you take your brother and you ride north. Don't stop, don't look back, promise me." She wanted to argue. He could see it in her eyes, in the set of her jaw. But she also understood what he wasn't saying, that this might be the last time he asked her for something, and she should give him the gift of her obedience. "I promise," she whispered. Ethan pulled her into a rare embrace. She was almost as tall as he was now, all sharp angles and fierce heart. Sarah's daughter. "If I had to bet on anyone surviving this," he said quietly, "I'd bet on you. Remember that." Then he let her go, went inside to get his coat and his revolvers, and prepared to ride into whatever darkness was waiting. The church was lit up like a beacon when Ethan arrived. Horses crowded the small yard, maybe 20 of them. Every property owner in the valley who hadn't already run or sold. They stood in small groups outside, talking in low voices, their faces shadowed and worried. The conversation died when Ethan dismounted. They all knew him, of course. The quiet widower, the one who kept to himself, the one who'd never caused trouble or asked for help. But something about the way he moved tonight, the way he carried himself, made them step back slightly, made them reassess. "Ethan," Frank Donnelly said, his voice gravelly with age and tobacco. "Glad you made it." "Frank?" Ethan nodded to the others. "Tom, Samuel, Jacob." "Quite the gathering," Tom said nervously. "Inside's fuller than Sunday service. Let's see what they have to say." They filed in together, a ragged group of farmers and ranchers who'd spent their lives breaking their backs on hard land, men who'd thought distance and determination would be enough to keep them free. The church was packed, every pew full, people standing along the walls, and at the front, where the pastor usually stood, were Stockton, Webb, and Cole. But there was someone else, too. A fourth man, older, distinguished, wearing a suit that cost more than most of the buildings in Iron Hollow. His hair was silver, his bearing military, and when he looked at the assembled crowd, there was no warmth in his eyes, only calculation. "Gentlemen," Stockton began, his voice carrying easily in the small space, "thank you for coming. I know many of you have questions, concerns about the changes coming to our valley. Tonight, I hope to address those concerns." "By threatening us?" someone called out. Ethan didn't see who. Stockton's smile didn't waver. "No one has been threatened. We're simply businessmen making legitimate offers for land. If some of your neighbors chose to accept—" "The Morrisons didn't choose," another voice, louder. "Their place burned. An unfortunate accident." "Bullshit!" Tom Brennan was on his feet. 3 fires in 2 months? That's not accident. That's... Cole moved. Just slightly. Just enough. His hand didn't go to his gun. Didn't need to. The implication was clear. Tom sat down. Stockton's smile widened. "As I was saying, we're here to make things simple. The Iron Valley Development Company is prepared to offer fair market value for every property in this valley. More than fair, actually. We understand the sentimental attachment some of you have to this land, and we're willing to compensate accordingly." "And if we say no?" Frank Donnelly asked. The fourth man stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was smooth, educated, and utterly cold. "Then you'll be the only holdouts in a valley we own," he said. "No roads in or out that we don't control. No supplies that don't come through our stores. No water rights that we don't grant." He paused, letting that sink in. "You'll be islands in our ocean, gentlemen, and islands eventually sink." "Who are you?" Ethan asked. His voice cut through the murmuring like a knife. The man's eyes found him, assessed him in a single glance. "Marcus Hardwick," he said, "president of Iron Valley Development. And you are?" "Not interested in your offer." Something flickered across Hardwick's face. Surprise, maybe, or respect. Hard to tell. "Mr. Vance." Recognition now. "Ah, the strategic property. Tell me, Mr. Vance, do you have children?" Every instinct Ethan had honed over years of survival screamed danger. "That's not relevant," he said quietly. "I think it is. Children need security, Mr. Vance, education, opportunity, things that are hard to provide on a failing ranch in the middle of nowhere." Hardwick's smile was sharp. "We could help with that. Generous compensation plus guaranteed employment in our operation. Your children would want for nothing." "My children want to live free." "Freedom is a luxury, Mr. Vance, one that requires power to maintain. Do you have power?" The question hung in the air. Around him, Ethan felt the other men shifting, uncertain. They were looking at him, he realized, waiting to see if he had an answer that gave them hope. He thought about the box under his bed, about the uniform, the weapons, the skills he'd spent 4 years trying to forget, about all the ways he could answer Hardwick's question that would terrify everyone in this room. Instead, he said, "I have land, I have water, and I have the will to keep both. That's power enough." Hardwick studied him for a long moment. Then he turned to Stockton and nodded slightly. Stockton cleared his throat. "We're prepared to make one final offer. Those who accept tonight will receive our best terms. Those who refuse," he shrugged. "Well, refusing has consequences. Ask the Morrisons." There it was. The threat, out in the open. The room erupted. Shouting, arguing, men surging to their feet. Sheriff Wade and his deputies moved to the walls, hands on their guns, and Ethan saw the trap for what it was. They'd been gathered here, counted, assessed. Threats had been made, reactions had been noted. Anyone who refused would be marked, and marked men died. Cole was watching him again. Their eyes met across the chaos, and Ethan saw the question there. "What are you going to do?" Ethan stood. The movement was calm, deliberate. Around him the shouting faded slightly. "I'm going home," he announced, "and I'm keeping my land. Anyone who tries to take it is welcome to try." He walked toward the door. Cole stepped into his path. For a moment the two men stood there, close enough to touch, close enough to kill. "You're making a mistake," Cole said quietly. Only Ethan could hear him. "I've made worse. I believe you." Cole's eyes held something Ethan couldn't quite read. "But this isn't the war, Vance. There's no glory here, just dirt and death. There was never glory, just survival. Cole's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, not quite a frown. Then he stepped aside. Ethan walked out into the night. Behind him, he heard Hardwick's voice, smooth and certain. The offer stands for 24 hours. After that, we begin acquisition by other means. The door closed on the sound of breaking hope. The ride home took forever and no time at all. Ethan's mind was racing, cataloging, planning. Hardwick wasn't bluffing. The operation was too organized, too confident. They had money, power, and most importantly, they had time. They could wait out any resistance, starve out any holdouts, unless someone fought back hard enough to make it cost more than it was worth. Unless someone reminded them that violence was a blade that cut both ways. Unless someone became the kind of problem that made expansion into Iron Hollow too expensive, too bloody, too publicly brutal to continue. Ethan knew how to be that kind of problem. The question was whether he could become it without losing what was left of his soul. He was still wrestling with that question when he crested the final ridge and saw his house, saw the orange glow, saw the flames. For one frozen heartbeat, Ethan couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare at his home, his children's home, burning against the night sky. Then he was moving. The horse sensed his urgency, stretched into a full gallop. The distance disappeared beneath pounding hooves. Ethan's hand found his revolver without conscious thought, his body remembering what his mind had tried to forget. A quarter-mile out, he saw figures, men on horseback, circling the house, watching it burn, making sure. Rage hit him like a physical force, not the hot, wild anger of impulse, but something cold and surgical, the kind of rage that came with absolute clarity. They'd touched his children, and for that, they would die. The ghost woke up. Ethan pulled his horse to a sliding stop 50 yards from the house, in the shadow of the barn. The riders, he counted 5, hadn't seen him yet, too busy watching their work. He dismounted silent, moved silent. His revolver came up smooth and sure. The first man died before he knew Ethan was there. The shot took him in the chest, punched him backward off his horse. The sound echoed across the valley like thunder. The other 4 wheeled, confused, searching for the shooter in the darkness. Ethan was already moving, already firing. 2 more shots, 2 more men down. He didn't waste ammunition on fancy shooting. Center mass, double tap, next target. The survivors scattered, returning fire wildly. Bullets whined past Ethan's head, but he was sliding into cover behind the water trough, reloading with practiced speed. 4 rounds left in his first revolver, full cylinder in the second. More than enough. He came around the trough low and fast, shot the 4th man as he tried to flank. The 5th wheeled his horse, saw his odds, and ran. Ethan let him go. He needed someone to carry the message. The entire firefight had taken maybe 30 seconds. Ethan holstered his weapons and ran for the house. The fire had spread to the porch, was licking at the walls, but the structure was still intact, still salvageable. "Lena!" he shouted. "Ben!" No answer. Panic clawed at him. He kicked in the door, met by a wall of heat and smoke. His eyes watered instantly, but he pushed in anyway, calling their names. The main room was empty. The bedrooms. He found Lena in her room, unconscious but breathing, a nasty bruise on her temple where someone had hit her. Ben was in his bed, gagged and tied, but awake, his eyes wild with fear. Ethan cut Ben free first, pulled the gag away. "Can you walk?" Ben nodded frantically. "Get your sister outside now." While Ben dragged Lena towards safety, Ethan grabbed what he could, blankets, his rifle, the ammunition box from under his bed. The heat was overwhelming, the smoke burning his lungs, but his hands stayed steady. The box. He needed the box. He dropped to his knees, reached under the bed, found the wooden case, dragged it out, and ran. Outside, the cool air hit him like a blessing. He sucked in great gasping breaths while Ben laid Lena gently in the grass. She was stirring, groaning. "Dad?" Ben's voice shook. "Dad, what?" "Later." Ethan went to the well, started filling buckets. "We save what we can." They fought the fire for an hour, not to save the house, that was gone, but to keep it from spreading to the barn, the outbuildings, the things they'd need to survive. By the time the flames died down to embers, Ethan's home was a smoking skeleton. But his children were alive. and the wooden box sat in the dirt, waiting. Lena woke up as dawn broke. Her first word was a curse. Her second was a question. What happened? Ethan told her. Watched her face go from confusion to horror to cold, hard anger. They tried to kill us, she said flatly. They tried to send a message. Same thing. Ethan couldn't argue with that. Ben appeared from the barn, carrying blankets and food. His hands weren't shaking anymore. His eyes had the look of someone who'd seen the world for what it really was and had decided to stop being surprised. What do we do now? He asked. Ethan looked at his children, at the ruins of their home, at the valley spreading out around them in the morning light, beautiful, brutal, and utterly unforgiving. He thought about Sarah, about the promise he'd made her. Then he thought about the men who'd burned his house, who'd hurt his daughter, who'd threatened his son. Some promises, it turned out, were written in blood, and blood demanded blood. Now, Ethan said quietly, we stop running, we stop hiding, and we remind them why some men should never be cornered. He opened the wooden box. The uniform lay there, waiting. The weapons gleamed dully in the morning light. Dad? Lena's voice was uncertain. What is that? Ethan picked up one of the revolvers, felt its familiar weight, its perfect balance. This, he said, is who I used to be. He looked at his children, at their scared faces and brave hearts. And it's who I need to be again, for you, for this valley. He loaded the revolver with smooth, efficient movements, for everyone who can't fight back. The sun climbed higher. The valley waited. And somewhere in the ruins of his burned home, Ethan Vance buried the quiet farmer and woke the ghost. The hunt was about to begin. The morning after the fire, Ethan sent his children away. Not far, just to Frank Donnelly's place, 10 miles north. Far enough that if things went bad, they'd have a chance. Close enough that Ethan could reach them if he survived what was coming. I don't want to go, Lena said. She stood beside the packed wagon, arms crossed, jaw set in that stubborn way that reminded Ethan so much of Sarah, it made his chest ache. I know. Then let me stay. Let me help. Ethan finished checking the horse's harness, not looking at her. If he looked at her, he might break. You are helping by keeping your brother safe. Ben can take care of himself. Ben's 14. Ethan finally turned to face her. And you're 16. Neither of you should have to deal with what's coming. We're already dealing with it. They burned our house, Dad. They hurt me. Her voice cracked. They're not going to stop. I know. He put his hands on her shoulders, felt her trembling beneath his grip. That's why I need you somewhere safe. That's why I need to know that no matter what happens, you and Ben will survive. What about you? Ethan didn't answer, couldn't answer, because they both knew the truth. He wasn't planning to survive. He was planning to make it cost them so much that they'd give up the valley rather than face what he'd become. And that kind of plan didn't include walking away. Frank will take care of you, he said instead. He's a good man, stubborn, but good. You stay there until this is over. How will we know when it's over? You'll know. Ben appeared from the barn carrying the last of their supplies. He'd been quiet all morning, moving with a stillness that worried Ethan. Too calm, too controlled, like he was holding something back. We're ready, Ben said, and Ethan helped them into the wagon. Lena sat rigid, her eyes already red from crying she wouldn't let him see. Ben took the reins, his hands steady. Ben. Ethan kept his voice low. Take care of your sister. I will. And don't try to come back, no matter what you hear. Promise me. Ben met his eyes, and Ethan saw something old looking back at him. Something that understood exactly what was being asked. I promise, Ben said. Then quieter. Make them pay, Dad. The wagon pulled away. Ethan watched until it disappeared over the ridge, watched until the dust settled, and the valley was empty again except for the ruins of his home and the weight of what he was about to do. Then he went to work. The first thing he did was inventory what remained. The barn had survived, which meant he still had tools, weapons, ammunition. The well was intact, water. The root cellar had been far enough from the house to escape the fire. Food. He could hold out for weeks if he needed to, but he wouldn't need weeks. This would be over, one way or another, in days. The wooden box sat open on what used to be his porch. Ethan stared at its contents like a man staring at a loaded gun pointed at his own head. Everything he'd tried to bury, everything he'd promised Sarah he'd never touch again. His hands reached for the uniform anyway. It still fit. 4 years of farm work had kept him lean and hard. The dark blue wool settled on his shoulders like memory, like weight, like all the things he'd done and all the men he'd killed wearing the same cloth. The revolvers came next, custom-made during the war by a gunsmith in Philadelphia who understood that some men needed weapons that fit their hands like extensions of their own bodies. Balanced, reliable, deadly. Ethan checked the mechanisms, found them perfect despite years of storage, oil and care. Even when he'd tried to forget, some part of him had kept them ready, just in case. The knife went on his belt. 8 inches of carbon steel, sharp enough to shave with, strong enough to punch through ribs. He'd killed 7 men with this knife. Maybe 8. Hard to remember after a while. They all blurred together in the dark. Last was the leather journal. He opened it, saw maps and notes in his own handwriting. Strike points, supply routes, weaknesses and fortifications. The accumulated knowledge of 3 years spent behind enemy lines, learning how to break things so thoroughly they'd never be fixed. How to break men. Ethan closed the journal and tucked it inside his coat. Then he walked to what remained of his porch and sat down to wait for dark. The sun crawled across the sky. Ethan sat motionless, watching the valley, his mind running through scenarios and strategies with the cold efficiency he'd thought he'd forgotten. But muscle memory went deeper than conscious thought. The calculations came easy, too easy. Hardwick's operation would be based in town. That's where the money was, where the control was. Stockton would be there, coordinating. Cole would be there, planning the next move. They'd have men, maybe a dozen, maybe more. Armed, organized, confident. Confidence was a weakness. So was predictability. They'd expect him to run or to hole up here and wait for them to come finish the job. They wouldn't expect him to attack. Wouldn't expect one man to ride into town and start a war, which was exactly why it would work. Around 3 in the afternoon, a rider appeared on the eastern ridge. Single man, watching. Not close enough to be a threat, just close enough to observe. Ethan didn't react. Let them watch. Let them think he was broken, scared, waiting. Let them be wrong. As the sun touched the western hills, painting the valley in shades of gold and blood, Ethan stood. He walked to the barn, saddled Smoke, Sarah's gray mare, the smartest horse he'd ever owned. The mare sensed something different in him, shifted nervously, but accepted the saddle. "Easy," Ethan murmured, running his hand along her neck. "I know, but I need you steady tonight. Can you do that?" The mare's ears flicked. Ethan took that as agreement. He let her out, checking his weapons one final time. Both revolvers loaded, safeties off, knife sharp, rifle in the saddle scabbard. He had maybe 40 rounds total. Against a dozen men or more, that should have seemed inadequate. It didn't. Ethan had done more with less. He was about to mount when he heard hoofbeats coming fast from the north. His hand went to his revolver before he recognized the horse. Tom Brennan's chestnut, running hard. But it wasn't Tom riding. It was his wife, Anna, her face streaked with tears and terror. Ethan met her as she pulled up, the horse lathered and wild-eyed. "Anna, what?" "They took him." She was gasping, barely coherent. "They came to the house this morning, said Tom had to come to town to sign papers, and when he refused, they just took him, Ethan. Beat him right there in front of the children and dragged him away." Cold settled in Ethan's gut. "How many?" "4 men. That big one, Cole. He was leading them. He said—" Her voice broke. "He said Tom was going to be an example, that anyone who stood against the company would learn what happens to troublemakers." "Where's Tom now?" "Town. They have him at the old mining office. Cole said they'd turn him over to the sheriff in the morning for disturbing the peace. But Ethan, Sheriff Wade is one of them. Once Tom's in that jail, he won't make it to morning," Ethan finished. "I know." Anna grabbed his arm. "You have to help him. You're the only one who—" She stopped, really seeing him for the first time. Seeing the uniform, the weapons, the hard set of his face. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done days ago. Ethan, you can't fight them all. They'll kill you." "Probably." He mounted Smoke, settled into the saddle. "But I'll make them pay for it first." "This is insane." This is war, Anna, and in war, sometimes one man doing the insane thing is worth more than an army doing the smart thing. He looked down at her. Go home. Lock your doors. Whatever happens tonight, keep your children inside and don't come to town until morning. What are you going to do? Ethan didn't answer, just turned Smoke toward town and kicked her into a trot. Behind him, Anna called out, Ethan, your children, what do I tell them if— Tell them I tried to be the man their mother thought I could be. Then he was riding, the valley falling away behind him, the darkness rising ahead. The ride to Iron Hollow took an hour. Ethan used the time to clear his mind, to let the old training take over. He wasn't a father anymore, wasn't a farmer, wasn't even Ethan Vance, really. He was the ghost. And Ghost didn't hesitate, didn't doubt, didn't feel anything except the mission. Get Tom out. Make them pay. Send a message so loud the whole valley would hear it. Simple, clean, probably fatal. He was fine with that. The outskirts of town appeared as full dark settled. Ethan slowed Smoke to a walk, studying the approaches. Lights burned in the saloon, the mining office, a few houses. Main Street was empty except for horses tied outside the saloon and 2 men standing guard by the mining office. 2 guards meant Tom was still alive. They wouldn't waste men watching a corpse. Ethan circled wide, coming at the town from the south, where the buildings backed up against a dry wash. He left Smoke tied in a cluster of cottonwoods with enough slack in the reins that she could break free if needed. If this went wrong, the mare would find her way home. Then he moved into town on foot, sliding between buildings like smoke. The old mining office sat at the end of Main Street, a 2-story structure left over from when Iron Hollow had briefly been a silver town. That boom had gone bust 10 years ago, leaving behind empty buildings and broken dreams. Perfect place for the company to set up operations. Private, intimidating, easy to control. Ethan approached from the back, keeping to the shadows. The 2 guards were at the front, bored and cold, stamping their feet and passing a flask. Not professionals, just hired muscle who thought this would be easy money. They were about to learn otherwise. Ethan counted windows, 2nd floor, 3rd from the left. That would have been the foreman's office back in the day. Best place to keep a prisoner. He studied the building, found the back stairs, the old loading door, the weaknesses. Then he heard the scream. It cut through the night like a knife. Raw, animal, the sound of someone being hurt badly. Tom's voice, Ethan was sure of it. The guards at the front laughed. One of them called out, "Cole's just getting started!" Red touched the edges of Ethan's vision. He forced it down, forced himself to stay calm, to think. Going in angry got you killed. Going in cold kept you alive. He moved to the back stairs, tested each step. Solid. The door at the top had a simple lock. Ethan pulled a strip of metal from his coat, an old lockpick, another relic from the war, and had it open in 30 seconds. Inside was dark and quiet. He let his eyes adjust, breathing slow and steady. The building smelled like dust and old wood and something else, blood and fear. Voices filtered down from upstairs. Multiple men, at least 3, maybe 4. Ethan drew his right-hand revolver, kept his left hand free. He'd need both before this was over. The stairs to the 2nd floor were in the main room. Ethan crossed to them, each footfall placed with surgical care. The 3rd step creaked. He skipped it, kept moving. At the top, a hallway stretched into darkness. Light spilled from under a door at the far end. The voices were louder now, and Ethan could make out words. "Tell us who else is planning to refuse." That was Stockton's voice, sharp with frustration. "Go to hell." Tom, his words thick and slurred. They'd been beating him for a while. "Mr. Brennan, you're only making this harder on yourself." "Good." A meaty sound, fist on flesh. Tom grunted but didn't scream again. "He's stubborn." A new voice, cultured and cold. Hardwick. "I respect that. But stubbornness without power is just stupidity." "Then I'm real stupid," Tom managed. Another blow. This one brought the scream Ethan had heard from outside. "Enough!" Cole's voice surprisingly gentle. "He doesn't know anything. He's just a farmer who got brave at the wrong time." "Then he serves as an example," Hardwick said. "Break his hands. Make sure people see the damage. Let them understand what refusal costs." Ethan stopped thinking. He covered the hallway in 3 strides, kicked the door open, and walked into violence. The room was lit by oil lamps. Tom sat tied to a chair in the center, his face a mask of blood. Stockton stood to the left, Webb to the right. Cole was directly in front of Tom, and Hardwick leaned against the far wall, watching like a man at the theater. They all turned at the crash of the door. Ethan shot Stockton first. Center mass, double tap. The man went down without a sound. Webb was reaching for his gun when Ethan's second shot took him in the chest. He dropped, gasping. Cole was faster. He had his pistol out and was bringing it up when Ethan's third shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. The big man crashed into a table, upending it. 3 shots. 3 seconds. Hardwick hadn't moved. He stood against the wall, hands visible and empty, his face showing more curiosity than fear. "Impressive," he said calmly. "You must be Vance." Ethan kept his revolver trained on Hardwick while his peripheral vision tracked Cole. The big man was down but not out, clutching his shoulder, his gun on the floor 3 feet away. "Tom," Ethan said, not taking his eyes off the room. "Can you walk?" "Maybe. They didn't break my legs yet. Cut him loose." "I'm afraid I can't allow that." Hardwick's voice remained eerily calm. "Mr. Brennan assaulted my employees. He needs to face justice." "Your justice or the law's?" "In Iron Hollow, they're the same thing." Ethan moved deeper into the room, angling so he could cover both Hardwick and Cole. "Not anymore." Something shifted in Hardwick's expression. Not fear, recognition. "You're military, the way you move, the way you shoot. Which war?" "Does it matter?" "I suppose not, but it explains the confidence." Hardwick straightened slightly. "It doesn't change the mathematics, though. You've killed 2 of my men, wounded a 3rd. That's 3 capital offenses. Even if you walk out of here tonight, you'll hang. Only if someone's alive to tell the story. You'd kill an unarmed man in cold blood?" "I've done worse." The truth of it hung in the air. Hardwick studied him, and Ethan saw the moment the older man understood. This wasn't a farmer pretending to be dangerous. This was someone who'd forgotten more about killing than most men would ever learn. "What do you want?" Hardwick asked. "I want you gone. Out of the valley. All of you." "Not possible. We've invested too much." "Then invest in your funeral arrangements." Footsteps pounded up the stairs. The guards from outside finally reacting. Ethan's mind calculated angles, cover, escape routes. 2 more men, 6 rounds left in this revolver, full cylinder in the other. Doable, but Tom complicated things. The guards burst through the door, guns drawn. Ethan shot the first one before he cleared the threshold. 1 round, right through the heart. The man's momentum carried him into his partner, tangling them both. Ethan's second shot hit the second guard in the leg, dropping him. 8 shots fired, 4 men down, 1 wounded, 2 rounds left in the first revolver. Cole chose that moment to lunge for his dropped pistol. Ethan pivoted, but Cole was fast for a big man. His hand closed on the gun just as Ethan's last 2 rounds punched into the wall where Cole's head had been a heartbeat before. Click. Empty. Ethan dropped the spent revolver and drew his second, but Cole was already firing. The bullet creased Ethan's ribs, a line of fire that stole his breath. He stumbled, his return shot going wide. Cole was up now, blood streaming from his shoulder, but his gun steady. "Should have killed me when you had the chance." "Night's young." They stood there 10 feet apart, guns pointed at each other. A standoff. In his peripheral vision, Ethan saw Hardwick edging toward the door. "Don't," Ethan said without looking at him. Hardwick froze. "Smart man," Cole said, "but you're still dead. Even if you shoot me, my finger will pull this trigger. We both die." "I've made my peace with that." "Have you?" Cole's eyes flicked toward Tom, still tied to the chair. "What about him? He dies too in this scenario." Ethan's jaw tightened. Cole saw it, smiled grimly. "That's what I thought. You're not the cold killer you're pretending to be. You care. That's your weakness." "Maybe. Or maybe." Ethan's left hand, which had been hanging at his side, came up holding the knife. He threw it in one fluid motion, no thought, pure muscle memory. The blade took Cole in the throat. The big man's eyes went wide. His gun wavered, fired into the floor. Then he dropped, gurgling, his hands clutching uselessly at the knife. Ethan's revolver swung back to Hardwick. Still think I can't kill in cold blood? Hardwick had gone pale. That was murder. That was war, and you started it. Ethan moved to Tom, keeping his gun on Hardwick. He cut the ropes with a second knife from his boot. Tom sagged forward, barely conscious. Can you ride? Ethan asked. If you put me on a horse, I'll figure it out. Good enough. Ethan hauled Tom up, the farmer's weight heavy against his side. To Hardwick, here's what happens next. You leave Iron Hollow, take your money, your company, your plans, and you leave. Tonight. Or I kill everyone associated with your operation, one by one, in the dark, until there's no one left to run it. Ethan met his eyes. I'm very good at killing in the dark. Hardwick was silent for a long moment. Around them, the wounded guard was moaning, Cole was still, and the smell of blood and gunpowder hung thick. You're one man, Hardwick finally said. One man can't win this. Watch me. Ethan backed toward the door, Tom stumbling beside him. At the threshold, he paused. You have until dawn. After that, anyone wearing your company colors is a target. And Hardwick, I don't miss. He was gone before Hardwick could respond, moving down the stairs with Tom, through the back door, into the blessed darkness. Behind them, he heard Hardwick shouting for help, for horses, for his remaining men. Let him shout. The message was sent. The war had begun. Getting Tom to the horses took too long. The farmer was fading, his weight growing heavier with each step. Ethan could feel blood soaking through his own shirt from the crease in his ribs, but he pushed it aside. Pain later. Survival now. They were crossing the dry wash when he heard riders, coming fast from Main Street, at least 4, maybe more. No time to get to smoke, no time to run. Ethan lowered Tom behind a fallen cottonwood, checked his revolver. 4 rounds left. Not enough. The riders spread out searching. Torches bobbed in the darkness, casting wild shadows. Voices called back and forth, coordinating. There, by the wash! Hoofbeats turned toward them. Ethan raised his gun, sighted on the lead rider, and a shot cracked from the ridge above town. One of the riders jerked and fell from his saddle. Another shot, another man down. The remaining riders wheeled in confusion, looking for the new threat. Ethan used the chaos to grab Tom and drag him toward the trees. More shots from the ridge, methodical and precise, driving the company men back toward town. Ethan reached smoke, got Tom across the saddle. The farmer was unconscious now, bleeding badly. He needed a doctor, needed rest, needed... Vance! The voice came from the darkness above. Ethan's gun came up before his mind registered the voice as familiar. Frank Donnelly stepped into view, a rifle in his gnarled hands. Behind him, 3 more men emerged from the rocks. Farmers, property owners, men who'd been at the church meeting. Frank, what are you... Saving your stubborn hide, looks like. The old man spat tobacco juice. Figured you'd do something stupid. Came to make sure you didn't do it alone. I told Anna. Anna came to my place screaming about company men and kidnapping, rounded up everyone I could trust. Frank gestured to the others. We're not soldiers, Ethan, but we can shoot, and we're damn tired of being scared. Ethan looked at them. 4 old men with old rifles and young courage. They'd never survive a real fight, but they'd bought him time, bought Tom's life. Thank you, he said quietly. Thank us by staying alive. Valley needs you. Frank peered at Tom's unconscious form. He needs a doctor. I know, but bringing him to town, Margaret Harper's got medical training from when her husband ran the mine. We'll take him to her store, go in the back way. It was risky, but Tom was dying, no choice. They moved through the darkness in a ragged column, Frank's men providing rear guard, while Ethan led Smoke with Tom across the saddle. Every minute felt like an hour. Every sound made Ethan's hand drift to his gun, but they made it. Margaret's general store sat dark and quiet. Frank knocked on the back door in a pattern, 3 quick, 2 slow. The door opened immediately. Margaret took one look at Tom and her face went hard. Inside. Now. They carried Tom to the back room where Margaret kept her inventory. She'd already cleared a table, laid out bandages and instruments that looked like they belonged in a hospital, not a general store. How bad? She asked, cutting away Tom's shirt. Beaten. Maybe broken ribs. He was conscious 20 minutes ago. Margaret's hands moved with practiced efficiency, probing, checking, cleaning. Ribs are cracked, but not broken. Lot of bruising, some cuts that'll need stitches. He'll live. Her eyes found Ethan. You're bleeding too. I'm fine. You're shot. Sit down. Margaret, sit down. The command in her voice was absolute. Ethan sat. Margaret peeled his shirt away from the wound, hissed at what she saw. Bullet carved a trench in your ribs. Couple inches over and you'd be dead. Story of my life. Hold still. She cleaned the wound with something that burned like fire. Ethan gritted his teeth, didn't make a sound. Margaret worked in silence, her hands steady despite the situation. Frank appeared in the doorway. Posted the boys outside. Anybody come sniffing around, we'll know. Company men? Ethan asked. Scattered. Your little demonstration got their attention. Word is Hardwick's holed up in the saloon, trying to figure out what to do. He'll send for reinforcements. Probably, but that takes time. Telegraph office closed at 6. Even if he sends a rider tonight, help won't arrive until day after tomorrow at earliest. Frank grinned, showing tobacco-stained teeth. Gives us a window. Us? You think we're letting you do this alone? Ethan, you just walked into their headquarters and shot your way out with a hostage. Every property owner in this valley just found their spine. They're ready to fight. Margaret tied off this bandage, stepped back. You're going to get people killed. People are already dying, Ethan said. The Morrisons, the Hutchins. How many more before we say enough? So we fight back and what? More people die just on our side too? Maybe. Or maybe we hit them hard enough that staying costs more than leaving. That's not a plan. That's a prayer. Ethan stood, testing his ribs. Pain flared, but he could move. I don't pray, Margaret. I plan. And my plan is to make Iron Hollow too expensive, too dangerous, too bloody for Hardwick to control. I make him choose between his investment and his life. And if he chooses to escalate, then I escalate faster. Margaret shook her head. Sarah wouldn't have wanted this. The mention of his wife's name hit Ethan like a physical blow. For a moment he couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the memory of Sarah's face, her voice, her absolute conviction that violence was never the answer. But Sarah was dead. Killed in an accident that maybe wasn't an accident. And her children had nearly burned to death in their beds because Ethan had tried to handle this her way. Sarah's not here, he said quietly. I am, and I'm going to keep our children safe the only way I know how. Margaret's expression softened. I know. I don't want to lose you too. You won't. I'm too mean to die. Frank coughed. Company men are moving. Saw torches heading toward the mining office. Looking for their dead, Ethan said. Let them. Everybody they find is a message. What now? Ethan moved to the window, peered out at the dark street. His mind was already working, planning, seeing the battlefield that Iron Hollow had become. The company had numbers. They had money. They had the law on their side. But Ethan had something they didn't, nothing left to lose. Now we make them understand what they're facing, he said. Frank, gather every man you trust. We meet at the old chapel on Ridge Road, 1 hour. What are you going to do? Ethan checked his guns, reloading methodically. I'm going to teach them about fear. He left through the back door, melted into the shadows. Behind him, Frank was already moving, spreading the word. Margaret stood over Tom's unconscious form, her face troubled but resigned. The night was young, and Ethan Vance had work to do. The old chapel on Ridge Road had been abandoned for 5 years, ever since the newer church was built in town. It sat on a rise overlooking Iron Hollow, its walls still sound, but its windows dark and empty. 11 men gathered there in the hour after midnight. Frank Donnelly, Tom's older brother Marcus, who ran a cattle spread to the west. Jacob Sullivan and his 2 sons. Old Samuel Worth, who'd lost his ranch to a suspicious fire 3 weeks ago and had been squatting in his burned barn ever since. 3 others, farmers, ranchers, men with calloused hands and hard eyes. Not an army, barely a militia, but it was what Ethan had. He stood before them in the flickering lamplight, still wearing his uniform, his weapons visible. They stared at him like they were seeing him for the first time. Maybe they were. Some of you know me, Ethan began. Most of you think you do. Quiet Ethan Vance, the widower with 2 kids, keeps to himself, doesn't make trouble. He paused. That man died when they burned my house. Silence. What you're looking at now is who I used to be, a scout in the war. My job was to go places I wasn't supposed to be, do things I wasn't supposed to do, and come back alive. I was good at it. He met their eyes, one by one. I'm still good at it. We heard what you did tonight, Marcus Brennan said. His voice was rough with emotion. Tom's alive because of you. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. What I did tonight started something that won't end clean. Hardwick won't back down now. He can't. I've killed his men, embarrassed him in front of the whole valley. He'll come at us with everything he has. So we're just supposed to wait? Samuel Worth demanded. Wait for them to burn us out one by one? No, we attack first. That got their attention. Ethan moved to a table where he'd spread out a rough map of the valley. The company has 4 main assets in Iron Hollow. The mining office, their headquarters, the saloon, where their men sleep, the old warehouse by the rail spur, their supply depot, and the telegraph office. He pointed to each location. We hit all 4, tonight, before they can regroup. That's impossible, one of the farmers said. There's only 11 of us, 12 counting me, and we're not fighting them head on. We're making them think we're everywhere at once. Ethan's finger traced lines on the map. Frank, you take 3 men to the warehouse, set it on fire. Big, loud, obvious. Make them think that's the main attack. While we're really attacking, the telegraph office. Can't let them call for help. Jacob, you and your sons handle that. Quietly. No shooting unless you have to. Jacob nodded slowly. And the saloon? The headquarters? I'll handle those. Alone? Alone. Marcus Brennan stepped forward. That's suicide. That's the point. They're expecting an angry mob. They're not expecting one man who knows how to move in the dark. Ethan's voice was cold, certain. I don't need to kill them all. I just need to make them scared. Scared enough to leave. And if they don't, then tomorrow night we hit them again. And the night after that. Every night until they realize Iron Hollow costs more than it's worth. Samuel Worth laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You're talking about guerrilla warfare. I'm talking about survival. You're talking about turning this valley into a battlefield. It already is a battlefield. Ethan's hands flattened on the map. We just finally decided to fight back. The men exchanged glances. Fear warred with anger on their faces, practicality with desperation. They'd come here hoping Ethan had a solution. Instead, he was offering them a war. Frank finally spoke. If we do this, if we really do this, there's no going back. People will die. Maybe us. Maybe our families. People are already dying, Ethan said. The only question is whether we die running or die fighting. What about the law? Sheriff Wade is bought and paid for. There is no law in Iron Hollow except what we make. Another silence, longer this time. Then Marcus Brennan stepped up to the table, studied the map. The warehouse is mostly wood. Burns easy. We can handle that. Jacob Sullivan joined him. Telegraph office has 1 operator. My boys and I can take him quiet. One by one, the others moved forward. Committing, choosing. Accepting that the valley they'd known was gone, and only blood would buy it back. Ethan felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. Satisfaction, maybe, or just recognition that he'd finally stopped lying to himself about what needed to be done. We move in 1 hour, he said. Hit fast, hit hard, and get out. No heroics. We're not trying to win tonight. We're trying to make them bleed. And tomorrow? Ethan's smile was sharp as broken glass. Tomorrow, we see if they've got the stomach for a long fight. My money says they don't. The men dispersed to prepare, checking weapons and nerves. Frank lingered, watching Ethan with thoughtful eyes. Sarah really loved you, you know, the old man said. Ethan's jaw tightened. I know. She wouldn't have wanted this. She's not here to stop me. No, but she'd have wanted you to remember who you were trying to be, not who you used to be. Ethan was quiet for a long time, then, I'm trying, Frank. But the man I was trying to be couldn't protect his children, couldn't stop his house from burning. couldn't save this valley. He met Frank's eyes. So I'm being the man who can. Even if it destroys you? Even then. Frank sighed, clapped him on the shoulder. Just try to come back from this, Ethan, when it's over. Try to remember there's something besides killing. If I survive, I'll try. Fair enough. Frank headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I think Sarah would understand. She loved you for who you were, not who you pretended to be. And who you were was always a fighter. Then he was gone, leaving Ethan alone in the lamplight with his maps and his guns and his ghosts. An hour later, Iron Hollow burned. The warehouse went first, flames climbing into the night sky like a signal fire. Frank and his men did their job perfectly, loud, obvious, impossible to ignore. Company men poured out of the saloon, running toward the blaze, exactly as planned. While they were distracted, Jacob Sullivan and his son slipped into the telegraph office. The operator put up a fight, stupid, brave, and ultimately futile. They left him tied and gagged, the telegraph smashed, the wires cut. No one would be calling for help. And while chaos reigned and men shouted and the warehouse collapsed in on itself, Ethan Vance walked into the mining office alone. The building was supposed to be guarded. Was guarded, technically. 2 men at the front who'd run off when the warehouse exploded into flame. They'd be back soon, but Ethan only needed minutes. He'd learned patience during the war. Learned to move through enemy camps like a whisper, to kill silently, to be gone before anyone knew he'd been there. Those skills hadn't faded. If anything, desperation had sharpened them. The second floor still smelled like blood and gunpowder. Ethan ignored it, moved to what had clearly been converted into Hardwick's office. Desk, chairs, filing cabinets, papers everywhere. He didn't have time to read them. Instead, he pulled out a small flask of lamp oil, splashed it across the desk, the papers, the floor. Then he set a lamp in the center, turned the wick high, and walked away. The fire would start slow. By the time anyone noticed, it would be too late to save much. Evidence burned. Records burned. Control burned. Ethan was on the street when the first shouts of alarm went up. He was in the shadows by the dry wash when men started running toward the new blaze. And he was mounting smoke when he heard Hardwick's voice, raw with fury, screaming orders that no one could follow. Somewhere in the chaos, someone fired a gun. Then another. Panic spread like the flames. Ethan rode away from Iron Hollow, leaving destruction in his wake. Behind him, the night burned. He met the others at a prearranged spot 2 miles north of town. Everyone made it back. No casualties. Frank's men were grinning like boys who'd gotten away with something. Jacob's crew was quieter, more shaken, but intact. That was... Marcus Brennan searched for words. That was incredible. That was just the start, Ethan said. He was already thinking ahead, planning the next move. They'll be on high alert now, scared, angry. That's when men make mistakes. What's our next move? We wait. Let them spin up. Let them wear themselves out, looking for an army that doesn't exist. Ethan's eyes found the distant glow of fires still burning in Iron Hollow. Then, tomorrow night, we remind them we're still here. How? You'll see. They dispersed to their homes, to hidden camps, to places the company wouldn't think to look. Ethan rode north, toward Frank's place, toward his children. Seemed he needed to see them, needed to know they were safe, needed to remember what he was fighting for, because the ghost was fully awake now, and he could feel it taking over, feel the cold calculation replacing warmth, the tactical thinking drowning out humanity. It was easy to slip into, too easy, and that scared him more than Hardwick ever could. Dawn was breaking when he reached Frank's ranch. Lena and Ben were in the barn, mucking stalls. They saw him coming, dropped their tools, ran. Lena hit him hard enough to hurt his wounded ribs. He didn't care. He wrapped his arms around both of them, held them close, breathed in the smell of their hair, and felt something in his chest unclench. "Dad," Ben said, his voice muffled against Ethan's shoulder. "We heard about what happened in town. They're saying you killed—" "Later," Ethan interrupted. "Right now, I just need to know you're both okay." "We're fine." Lena pulled back, searching his face. "Are you?" Ethan wanted to lie. Wanted to tell her everything was fine, that he was in control, that the man she was looking at was still her father and not something darker. But she deserved better than lies. I'm doing what I have to, he said instead, to keep you safe. We know. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Just come back, okay? When this is over, come back to us. I will, Ethan promised. He hoped it wasn't a lie. Ethan stayed at Frank's place for 2 hours. No more. Long enough to eat something that wasn't jerky and stale bread, long enough to let his children see him breathing and whole, long enough to feel almost human again. Then Frank pulled him aside. Problem, the old man said quietly, leading Ethan to the porch where they couldn't be overheard. Tom's awake. He's talking. That's good news. Not all of it. Margaret sent word an hour ago. Tom's saying things he shouldn't, about you, about what you did, about the uniform. Frank's weathered face was troubled. People are asking questions about who you really are. Ethan leaned against the porch rail, feeling the ache in his ribs, the exhaustion in his bones. What kind of questions? The kind that make folks nervous. They're grateful, don't get me wrong, but they're also wondering what kind of man walks into a building full of armed men and walks back out leaving bodies behind. Frank paused. They're wondering if you're more dangerous than what we're fighting against. Maybe I am. That's not helping. Ethan rubbed his face, tried to think through the fog of fatigue. He'd been awake for almost 36 hours straight. His body was running on instinct and anger, nothing else. What do you want me to do, Frank? Apologize for keeping Tom alive? For giving this valley a fighting chance? I want you to be careful. The men who rode with you last night, they're scared, but they're committed. The ones who didn't? They're looking for reasons to back out, to make deals, to save their own skins. If they start thinking you're a monster, I am a monster. The words came out flat, emotionless. That's the whole point. Hardwick needs to believe he's fighting something worse than himself. Frank was quiet for a moment. Then, and when this is over? When Hardwick's gone and the valley's free? What happens to the monster then? Ethan didn't have an answer, hadn't let himself think that far ahead. Survival now, questions later. If there was a later. I need to get back, he said instead, before they come looking for me here. They will come looking, you know. Probably already sent riders north, south, east, west, looking for the ghost who's haunting them. Let them look. Ethan, I'll be careful, Frank. But I can't stop now. The moment I stop moving, the moment I give them time to breathe and think and plan, we lose. He met the old man's eyes. This only works if they're more scared of me than I am of them, and right now, I'm terrified. Frank's expression softened. I know, but terror's a knife that cuts both ways. Don't let it cut you so deep you can't heal. Before Ethan could respond, Ben appeared in the doorway. Dad, there's riders coming, 3 of them. Ethan's hand went to his gun before conscious thought. Frank caught his wrist. Wait, look. Ethan followed his pointing finger to the approaching horses. 3 riders, moving slow and visible. Not an attack. They were carrying something white, a flag, a shirt, something. A truce flag. Well, Frank muttered, that's unexpected. They waited on the porch, Ethan's children behind him, Frank at his side. The riders approached carefully, hands visible and away from weapons. As they got closer, Ethan recognized the man in the middle, Sheriff Wade. The other 2 were deputies, young men who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Wade himself looked haggard, his face drawn and pale. He pulled up 20 feet from the porch, his eyes finding Ethan. Vance, he said. His voice was hoarse. Sheriff, I'm here to talk. Talk then. Wade glanced at his deputies, then back at Ethan. Alone? No. A muscle worked in Wade's jaw. What I have to say is for you, not, then say it or leave. I'm done with private conversations and backroom deals. Wade's shoulders sagged. He suddenly looked older, beaten down by something heavier than just exhaustion. Fine. Hardwick wants to negotiate. Frank barked a laugh. Negotiate? After burning homes and beating men half to death? I didn't say it made sense. I'm just delivering the message. Wade's eyes never left Ethan. He wants to meet. Neutral ground. Talk about terms. What terms? Ethan asked. I don't know. He didn't tell me. Just said to find you and bring you in for a conversation. Bring me in. Ethan's voice was dangerously soft. Like I'm under arrest? No, like you're... Wade struggled for words. Like you're the only person in this valley he's afraid of right now. That startled Ethan. He'd expected threats, expected demands, not fear, not negotiation. Could be a trap, Frank said. Could be, Wade agreed, but I don't think it is. Hardwick's rattled. You killed 3 of his men, wounded another, burned 2 of his buildings. He can't find you, can't predict you, can't stop you. And his people are starting to wonder if the valley's worth dying for. Ethan studied Wade carefully, looking for the lie, the angle, the trap. But all he saw was a tired man caught between sides that would both gladly see him dead. Why are you doing this? Ethan asked. Why help him? Wade's laugh was bitter. You think I'm helping him? I'm trying to stop more people from dying. Your side, his side, doesn't matter to me anymore. I just want this to end before Iron Hollow tears itself apart. Should have thought about that before you took his money. Yeah, should have done a lot of things different. Wade straightened in his saddle. But here we are. So, will you meet with him or not? Ethan's mind raced through possibilities. A meeting could be genuine, could be a trap, could be a delaying tactic while Hardwick brought in reinforcements, but it could also be an opening, a chance to end this without more bloodshed, or a chance to get close enough to Hardwick to end him personally. When and where, Ethan asked. Today. Noon. The old grist mill on Copper Creek, midpoint between town and here. You can bring 1 person, so can he. And you? I'll be there to keep things civil, make sure nobody does anything stupid. That ship sailed when you sold out the valley. Wade flinched but didn't argue. Noon, Vance. If you want to end this, be there. He wheeled his horse and rode off, his deputies following. They disappeared over the ridge, leaving silence behind. It's a trap, Frank said immediately. Probably. You're going anyway. Have to. Ethan turned to find Lena and Ben watching from the doorway, their faces tight with worry. If there's even a chance this ends without more killing... There isn't, Frank interrupted. Men like Hardwick don't negotiate. They stall, they maneuver, they buy time. Then I'll know what he's planning. You'll be dead is what you'll be. Ethan smiled without humor. I've walked into worse odds. That was war. This is... Still war, Frank. Just a different battlefield. The old man shook his head. You're going to get yourself killed. And then what? Who protects the valley? Who protects your children? You will, Ethan said simply. Same as you've been doing, same as you did last night. Frank opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. They both knew Ethan was right. The old man would protect Lena and Ben with his last breath if it came to that. Would protect the valley. Would keep fighting. But he wouldn't be Ethan. Wouldn't have the skills, the experience, the willingness to do what needed doing. That was the trap Ethan had built for himself. By being the only one who could fight this way, he'd made himself indispensable. And indispensable men couldn't afford to die. I'll go with you, Frank said finally. No, I need you here. With my children. Ethan, that's not negotiable. Ethan's voice carried the weight of finality. If this goes bad, if I don't come back, you get Lena and Ben out. You take them north, to the territorial capital, somewhere with real law. You tell them what happened here. You make sure someone knows. And the valley? The valley burns or the valley survives. But my children live. That's all that matters. Frank studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. But you're taking someone. You walk in alone, you walk out dead. Who? A new voice spoke from behind them. Me. They turned. Marcus Brennan stood there, his rifle in hand, his face set with determination. Tom's my brother, Marcus said. You saved his life, I owe you. And besides, he hefted the rifle. I'm a fair shot, better than fair actually. You need someone watching your back, I'm your man. Ethan wanted to refuse, wanted to keep this clean, keep the blood on his hands alone. But Marcus was right. Walking into a meeting with Hardwick without backup was suicide. And despite everything, despite the ghost that had taken up residence in his skin, Ethan didn't actually want to die. He just needed Hardwick to think he did. All right, Ethan said. But you follow my lead. I say run, you run. I say shoot, you shoot. No questions, no hesitation. Understood. And if I go down, I get out and warn the others, I know. Marcus's jaw tightened. But you're not going down. Not if I can help it. They spent the next hour preparing. Ethan cleaned his weapons, checked his ammunition, changed into fresh clothes. The uniform stayed behind, too recognizable, too much of a target. He needed to look like a farmer having a conversation, not a soldier going to war, even if that's exactly what he was. Lena cornered him in the barn as he was saddling Smoke. "You're really doing this," she said. Not a question. "I am." "It's stupid." "Probably. Mom would have hated this. All of it." Ethan's hands stilled on the saddle. "I know." Lena moved closer, her voice dropping. "Then why? Why not just leave? Take us somewhere safe. Start over. Let the valley burn if that's what it wants to do. Because running doesn't solve anything. It just moves the problem somewhere else." Ethan met her eyes. "And because I'm tired of running. I've been running from what I was, who I was, for 4 years. Maybe it's time I stopped. Even if it kills you? Even then." She was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, "Teach me." "What?" "Teach me to fight, to really fight. Not just shooting targets, but," she gestured vaguely, "what you know, what you can do. Teach me." "Lena." "Don't." Her voice was fierce. "Don't tell me I'm too young, or it's too dangerous, or I should leave it to the men. I'm not a child anymore, Dad. This valley took that from me when they burned our house, when they hurt me." Her hand unconsciously touched the bruise on her temple. "I want to be able to protect myself, protect Ben. I don't want to be helpless again." Ethan looked at his daughter, 16 years old and already harder than most adults would ever be. She had Sarah's strength, his stubbornness, and a core of steel that came from surviving things no child should face. "If I make it back," he said quietly, "we'll talk about it. Promise?" "I promise." She hugged him then, fierce and quick. "Come back, Dad, please." "I'll try." It was the most honest thing he could give her. The ride to Copper Creek took 40 minutes. Ethan and Marcus moved carefully, eyes scanning the ridgelines for ambush, ears tuned for the sound of riders or guns. But the valley was quiet, almost eerily so. The grist mill came into view just before noon. It sat beside the creek, its wheel broken and still, its walls weathered gray. Nobody had used it in years, not since the miller died and his children moved east. Perfect neutral ground, isolated, visible from all approaches. Hard to sneak up on. Hard to escape from, too, Ethan noted. 2 horses were already tied outside. As Ethan and Marcus approached, Hardwick emerged from the mill, Wade beside him. Just the 2 of them. No Cole. He was dead. No small army waiting in ambush. Either Hardwick was genuine or he was very good at pretending. Ethan dismounted slowly, his hands visible. Marcus stayed on his horse, rifle across his saddle, ready but not threatening. "Vance?" Hardwick said. He looked tired, older than he had in the church meeting, worn down by something. "Hardwick. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "Here I am." Wade shifted nervously. "Gentlemen, let's keep this civil. No weapons drawn, no threats. Just talk." "Fine by me," Ethan said. His eyes never left Hardwick. "You wanted to negotiate. Negotiate." Hardwick gestured to the mill. "Inside, this conversation should be private. Out here's fine." "Vance, out here. Or not at all." Hardwick sighed, but nodded. "Very well." He clasped his hands behind his back, the posture of a man used to boardrooms and power. "I'll be direct. You've cost me a great deal. Men, resources, time. The Iron Valley Development Company's investment in this region is substantial, but your resistance has complicated things." "Good. Indeed, which brings me to my proposal." Hardwick paused. "Leave. Take your children, leave the valley, and I'll compensate you, generously. Enough to start over anywhere you want, plus a guarantee of safe passage." Ethan laughed, a short, harsh sound. "You want to buy me off?" "I want to avoid further bloodshed. You're one man, Vance, a dangerous man, I'll grant you, but still, just one. Eventually you'll make a mistake, you'll be caught, and when you are—" Hardwick shrugged. "I'd rather not have your death on my conscience if it can be avoided." "What about the other property owners? The ones you've been terrorizing?" "They can sell or they can stay. It's their choice. I'm simply offering them fair market value for land they were going to lose anyway. By burning them out? By beating them? Hardwick's expression hardened. Those were unfortunate excesses. My people overreacted. But the core business remained sound. This valley has resources, water, strategic value. Someone will develop it. Why not us? Because you're thieves hiding behind paperwork. And you're a murderer hiding behind righteousness. Hardwick's voice was cold now. Don't pretend you're better than me, Vance. I've seen your file. That stopped Ethan cold. What file? Did you think I wouldn't investigate? When a man kills 3 of my employees and walks away unscathed, I make inquiries. Military records. War Department archives. Hardwick smiled thinly. Captain Ethan Vance, Scout Division, decorated for valor, suspected in the deaths of 17 Confederate officers over a 6-month period. Never proven, of course, but the timing was suspicious. Wade had gone pale. Marcus's horse shifted nervously. Ethan kept his face blank, but inside something cold was spreading through his chest. His war record was supposed to be sealed, classified. How had Hardwick? I have connections, Captain. High-level connections. And those connections tell me you were very good at your job. Good enough that when the war ended, certain people wanted to keep you on. But you refused, disappeared, changed your name slightly, Ethan Vance instead of E.J. Van Court, and vanished into the frontier. That's not... Your wife knew, didn't she? Sarah. That was her real name, by the way. Not an alias. She was exactly who she claimed to be, a teacher from Ohio who fell in love with a broken soldier and thought she could fix him. Hardwick's smile widened. I wonder if she'd have felt the same if she knew how many men you'd killed. How you did it. The things you're capable of. Rage burned through Ethan's veins, hot and absolute. His hand moved toward his gun before he could stop it. Wade stepped between them. Easy! Both of you, easy! Marcus had his rifle up now, pointed at Hardwick. The older man didn't flinch. Go ahead, Hardwick said calmly. Shoot me. But my death won't stop what's coming. I have partners, investors, people who've put money into this valley and expect returns. You can kill me, but you can't kill them all. And when I'm gone, they'll just send someone else. Someone less inclined to negotiate. Ethan's hand hovered over his gun. Every instinct screamed at him to draw, to fire, to end this man who dug up his past and thrown it in his face like a weapon. But Hardwick was right. Killing him solved nothing, unless Ethan killed them all. The thought came cold and clear, and Ethan recognized it for what it was, the ghost thinking, the part of him that had survived the war by being willing to do anything, sacrifice anything, kill anyone. The part of him Sarah had been terrified of. He forced his hand away from the gun. I'm not leaving, he said quietly. Hardwick studied him. Even knowing what I know? Even knowing I could destroy your reputation, your children's future, with a few well-placed words? My children's future is here, in this valley, free. Sentiment is expensive, Captain. Then I'll pay the price. For a long moment they stood there, 2 men on opposite sides of a line drawn in blood and fire. Then Hardwick shook his head. I tried, he said, almost to himself. Wade, you're my witness. I offered peace. He refused. What does that mean? Wade demanded. It means the gloves come off. No more restraint. No more half measures. Hardwick looked at Ethan. I have 50 men arriving tomorrow. Former soldiers, real soldiers, not the hired thugs I've been using, men who know how to fight, how to kill. Let them come. They will. And when they do, they'll burn every farm, every ranch, every building in this valley that isn't under company control. They'll round up everyone who's resisted and try them for their crimes. Murder, arson, insurrection. On what authority? Martial law. I have a territorial judge who owes me favors. He'll sign the order. This valley will become a company town under military occupation. Hardwick's voice was utterly cold. And you, Captain? You'll hang, publicly. As an example, Marcus swore. Wade looked sick. Ethan just nodded slowly. You've thought this through. I've planned for every contingency. This is business, Captain, nothing personal. Business that kills people, burns homes, destroys lives. Welcome to civilization. This is how the world works. The strong take from the weak. The organized defeat the scattered. You can rage against it all you want, but you can't change it. Ethan was quiet for a moment, then, maybe not, but I can make you bleed for every inch. You're one man. You keep saying that, but one man killed 3 of yours. One man burned your buildings. One man has you scared enough to offer bribes and bring in an army. Ethan smiled, and it was a terrible thing to see. Imagine what one man can do with nothing left to lose. Something flickered in Hardwick's eyes, not quite fear, not quite respect, but acknowledgement. This is your last chance, Vance. Take the money, leave, live. No. Then you're a fool. Probably, but I'm a fool who's still breathing. Ethan turned toward Smoke. You're 50 men? Tell them to come ready. Tell them they're hunting a ghost. And tell them ghosts don't die easy. He mounted, Marcus following suit. As they turned to leave, Wade called out, Vance, wait. There has to be another way. There isn't. Not anymore. Ethan looked back at Hardwick one last time. You wanted war. You burned my house, hurt my daughter, threatened my son. Now you've got war. And before this is over, you're going to wish you'd left Iron Hollow the moment you heard my name. They rode away, leaving Hardwick and Wade standing in the shadow of the broken mill. Neither man spoke for a long moment. Then Wade said quietly, You just made a very bad enemy. I made him first, Hardwick replied. I just didn't know it until now. Those 50 men you mentioned, arriving tomorrow on the noon train, former cavalry, battle-tested. They'll sweep this valley clean in 3 days. And Vance? Hardwick was quiet, staring at the dust trail left by Ethan's horse. Vance worries me. Men like him, men with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for, they're dangerous in ways money can't solve. So what do? We bring in the army. We lock down the valley. We hunt him like the animal he is. Hardwick turned, and his face was hard as stone. And when we catch him, we make sure everyone sees what happens to men who resist progress. Wade looked away. I never signed up for this. No one asked what you signed up for, Sheriff. They just expect you to do your job. My job was keeping the peace. Then keep it, by any means necessary. Wade didn't respond. What could he say? He'd sold his soul months ago. Too late now for buyer's remorse. They rode back to town in silence, each man lost in his own thoughts. Behind them, the gristmill stood empty and accusing, a monument to failed peace. Ethan and Marcus rode hard for the first mile, then slowed to let the horses breathe. Marcus kept glancing over his shoulder, expecting pursuit. They're not following, Ethan said. How do you know? Because Hardwick meant what he said. He's done with small moves. Now he's bringing the hammer down. 50 men. Marcus sounded shaken. Former cavalry. We can't fight that. No, we can't. Then what do we do? Ethan was silent, his mind already working through scenarios. 50 trained soldiers changed everything. The guerrilla tactics that had worked against hired thugs wouldn't work against experienced fighters. They'd have discipline, organization, real combat skills, and they'd have numbers. We adapt, Ethan finally said. Make them fight on our terms, not theirs. How? The valley's our advantage. We know every ridge, every canyon, every approach. They don't. We use that. 50 against 11. 11 determined men who know the ground can tie up 50 who don't. For a while, anyway. And when that stops working, Ethan didn't answer, because they both knew what came next, retreat or die. Those were the only options once the numbers got bad enough. Unless he changed the math. An idea was forming, dangerous and desperate, the kind of idea that got men killed. But it might, just might, give the valley a chance. Marcus, when we get back, gather everyone. Everyone who's still willing to fight. We need to talk. About what? About finishing this before Hardwick's reinforcements arrive. Marcus stared at him. You want to attack town? Tonight? That's suicide. No, I want to attack Hardwick, personally. Cut the head off the snake. That's still suicide. Maybe, but it's the kind of suicide that might save everyone else. They rode in silence after that, each man wrestling with what was coming. The sun was dropping toward the western hills when they reached Frank's place. The others were already there, summoned by Frank's riders. 11 men, 12 counting Ethan. Farmers and ranchers who'd decided death was preferable to submission. not an army, but it was what he had. Ethan dismounted, faced them all. They looked at him with hope and fear in equal measure, waiting for him to pull another miracle out of the air. He didn't have miracles, just desperation and skill. It would have to be enough. Hardwick's bringing in reinforcements, Ethan said without preamble. 50 men, former soldiers. They arrive tomorrow. The reaction was immediate. Curses, despair, men looking at each other with wide eyes. We can't fight that, someone said. No, Ethan agreed. We can't. Not straight up. So we don't fight them. We end this tonight, before they arrive. How? Ethan met their eyes, one by one. We kill Hardwick. Without him, the company falls apart. The investors pull out. The operation dies. He's in town, Frank said slowly. Surrounded by his men, by Wade and his deputies. Getting to him, I've gotten to harder targets. When you had an army behind you, when you had support, extraction plans, backup. Frank's voice was gentle but firm. This is different. Everything's different now. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. But the principle's the same. Find the target, eliminate the target, disappear. And if you can't disappear, then I make sure Hardwick dies with me. Either way, the valley's free. The silence that followed was heavy with understanding. Ethan wasn't proposing a mission. He was proposing a suicide run with a goal attached. Marcus spoke up. I'll go with you. No. Ethan, someone needs to stay. Lead the others. Protect the families. Ethan's voice softened. You have a brother to look after. Let me do this alone. That's not... It's how it has to be. Before anyone could argue further, Lena's voice cut through the gathering. Then I'm going. Everyone turned. She stood in the doorway of Frank's house, her mother's rifle in her hands, her face set with absolute determination. No, Ethan said immediately. You need someone. Someone who can shoot. Someone quiet. Someone Hardwick won't expect. Lena, this isn't... I'm going, Dad. You can accept that and plan accordingly, or you can waste time arguing. But either way, I'm going. Ben appeared behind her. Me too. Absolutely not. We're your children, Lena said fiercely. This is our fight too. Our valley. Our home that burned. We have just as much right to risk our lives as you do. Ethan looked at his children, 16 and 14. Too young for war, too brave for their own good. He wanted to scream at them, to lock them in Frank's cellar if that's what it took to keep them safe. But he saw Sarah in their eyes. Sarah, who'd never backed down from a hard truth. Sarah, who taught them to stand up for what mattered. Sarah, who would have hated what Ethan was about to do, but would have understood why he had to do it. No, he said quietly. You stay here, both of you. That's final. Dad, I've already lost your mother. I won't... His voice cracked. I won't lose you too. I can't. Lena's eyes filled with tears, but her jaw stayed set. Then come back. Promise us you'll come back. Ethan wanted to promise, wanted to lie and give them hope, but he'd never lied to his children. Wouldn't start now. I'll try, he said. That's all I can give you. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was true. He spent the next hour preparing, cleaning weapons, checking ammunition, memorizing the layout of Iron Hollow from the maps in his journal. The others watched in silence, bearing witness to a man arming himself for death. As twilight fell, Ethan mounted Smoke for what might be the last time. The valley spread out before him, beautiful and brutal in the fading light. Somewhere out there Hardwick was waiting, confident, protected, certain of his victory. He was about to learn that certainty was just another word for blindness, and the ghost was very good at hunting blind men in the dark. Ethan turned Smoke toward Iron Hollow and rode into the gathering night, leaving his children and his hope behind. Only vengeance rode with him now. The ride to Iron Hollow took longer than it should have. Ethan kept Smoke to a walk, conserving her strength, using the time to let his mind settle into the cold clarity he'd need for what came next. The moon was rising, 3/4 full, bright enough to see by, but not so bright he couldn't use the shadows. Perfect hunting weather. He'd done this before, years ago. Slipped into enemy camps, identified targets, eliminated them, and vanished. The Confederacy had lost 17 officers to accidents, stray bullets, unfortunate encounters with wild animals. Officially, anyway. Unofficially, those deaths had patterns. Timing, precision. The ghost's work. Ethan had thought that part of him was buried with the uniform, locked away with the weapons. But it turned out you couldn't bury what lived in your bones. You could only pretend it wasn't there until circumstances made pretending impossible. He was done pretending. Iron Hollow appeared as a scattering of lights against the darkness. More lights than usual. The company had brought in extra men, posted guards, turned the town into a fortress. Smart. Hardwick was learning. But fortresses had weaknesses. Gates that opened, walls that could be climbed, guards who got tired, got careless, got dead. Ethan left Smoke tied in the same cottonwood grove as before, checked his weapons one final time. Both revolvers loaded, spare ammunition in his pockets, knife on his belt. Light, mobile, deadly. He moved toward town on foot, staying low, using terrain and darkness for cover. His ribs ached where the bullet had creased them, but the pain was distant, manageable. Pain was just information. Right now, it was telling him he was still alive. For now. The outskirts of Iron Hollow were quiet. A few dogs barked as he passed, but Ethan had always been good with animals. He moved like he belonged, like he was just another shadow, and the dogs settled. The main challenge would be getting to Hardwick. The man would be in the saloon. That's where the company had set up their temporary headquarters after the mining office burned. 2-story building, stone foundation, multiple exits. Defendable. And surrounded by men with guns. Ethan watched from the darkness across the street, counting. 6 guards outside that he could see. Movement in the windows suggested more inside. Maybe 20 men total, all armed, all alert. Impossible odds for a frontal assault. Good thing he wasn't planning to assault anything. He circled wide, came at the saloon from the back. The rear entrance was guarded by 2 men, both young, both nervous. They kept their hands on their guns, eyes scanning the darkness. Looking for an army, not seeing the one man moving through the shadows behind them. Ethan's knife found the first guard's kidney. The man gasped, started to turn, and Ethan's hand clamped over his mouth, driving the blade up into his heart. 12 seconds from alive to dead. No sound except a soft grunt. The second guard turned at the movement. "Hey, what?" Ethan threw the knife. It wasn't as clean as Cole's death, caught the guard in the chest instead of the throat. But it was effective. The man stumbled backward, clutching at the blade, trying to scream. Ethan was on him before he could, one hand crushing his windpipe, the other retrieving the knife. 20 seconds, 2 dead. He dragged both bodies into the shadows, arranged them so they looked like they were standing guard. In the dark, from a distance, it might buy him a few minutes. He tried the back door. Unlocked. Careless, but understandable. They thought they were safe, thought the guards were enough. Inside was a storage room, dark and cramped. Ethan moved through it silent as smoke, reached the door leading to the main floor of the saloon. He could hear voices now, multiple men talking, arguing, the clink of bottles and glasses. And one voice rising above the others, cultured and cold, Hardwick. Ethan eased the door open a crack, peered through. The main room was full. At least 15 men scattered around tables, drinking, playing cards, cleaning weapons. And at the far end, near the stairs to the second floor, Hardwick sat with 3 others, Webb's replacement, a man Ethan didn't recognize, Sheriff Wade, and a 4th man in a military uniform. The officer from the reinforcements, Ethan guessed, arrived early, or maybe just an advanced scout. Either way, it complicated things. Ethan studied the room, calculating angles, cover, escape routes. He could kill maybe 5 men before they figured out where the shots were coming from. 7 if he was lucky. But 20 was impossible, even for him. He needed them scattered, divided. Fire would do it. But he'd already used that trick. They'd be expecting it, so he'd give them something else to worry about. Ethan retreated to the storage room, found what he was looking for. Crates of whiskey bottles. He uncorked 3, splashed the contents across the floor, the walls, the stored supplies. Then he pulled out matches, struck one, and tossed it. The flames caught fast, spreading through the stored alcohol like a living thing. Ethan was already moving, back through the door, into the main room, his revolvers out. Someone shouted, "Fire! In the back!" Men surged toward the storage room. Ethan used the chaos, moved along the wall, putting tables between himself and the crowd. Nobody looked at him, just another body in the confusion. just another man trying to help. He was 10 feet from Hardwick when Wade saw him. The sheriff's eyes went wide. His hand dropped to his gun, mouth opening to shout a warning. Ethan shot him first. Clean headshot. Wade dropped without a sound. The room exploded into violence. Ethan fired 3 more times in rapid succession. The military officer, Webb's replacement, the 4th man. All down. All dead or dying. Hardwick dove behind a table as bullets started flying. Company men were shooting at each other in the confusion, not sure where the threat was, seeing enemies in every shadow. Ethan used it, moved between them like a ghost, firing when he had clear shots, disappearing when he didn't. Someone tackled him from behind. Ethan went down hard, his shoulder slamming into a chair. He rolled, brought his knee up into his attacker's groin, shoved him off. The man, young, terrified, probably never killed anyone in his life, scrambled for his dropped gun. Ethan shot him, 6 rounds fired from his right revolver, switching to his left. The room was chaos now, smoke from the fire mixing with gun smoke, men shouting and dying and running for exits. Ethan let them run. He wasn't here for them. He was here for Hardwick. The older man was moving toward the front door, staying low, using the panicked crowd for cover. Smart, disciplined. He'd been in situations like this before. Ethan vaulted over a table, landed in front of the door, cutting off Hardwick's escape. Their eyes met. "Hello," Ethan said quietly. Hardwick's hand moved toward his coat. Ethan's gun was already pointed at his chest. "Don't!" Hardwick froze. Behind them, the fire was spreading. Men were shouting. The building was coming apart. But in that moment, it was just the 2 of them, hunter and prey. "You came alone," Hardwick said, almost admiring. "That's either very brave or very stupid. Both." "Are you going to kill me?" "That was the plan." "And now?" Ethan's finger tightened on the trigger. One squeeze, one bullet. The man who'd ordered his home burned, his daughter hurt, his valley terrorized, dead. Justice. Vengeance. All the things he'd been fighting for. But something stopped him. Not mercy. Not conscience. Just calculation. "You have a family?" Ethan asked. Hardwick blinked, surprised. "A daughter. In Boston." "What would she think of you right now, of what you've done here?" "She'd think I was building her future. By destroying other people's." "That's how the world works, Vance. You know that. You've done worse in the name of causes you probably don't even remember." It was true. Ethan had killed men who probably had daughters, sons, families who grieved them. He justified it with words like duty and necessity and war, but in the end, they were still dead, and he'd still pulled the trigger. "I remember every single one," Ethan said quietly. "Every face, every name when I knew it, every shot." His gun didn't waver. "That's the difference between us. You hide behind words like business and progress. I know exactly what I am, what I've done. A killer. Yes. Then kill me. Prove it." The challenge hung in the smoke-filled air. Behind them, part of the ceiling collapsed, sending sparks flying. Men were fleeing the building now, the fire spreading too fast to contain. Ethan could pull the trigger. Should pull the trigger, end this, end Hardwick, end the threat to his valley. But killing Hardwick wouldn't end the company. Wouldn't stop the investors. Wouldn't save Iron Hollow. It would just make him a murderer. Again. "Get out," Ethan said. Hardwick stared. "What?" "Get out of Iron Hollow. Tonight. Take your men, your money, your plans, and leave. Don't come back. Or I finish what I started. But this time, I don't stop with you. I hunt down every investor, every partner, every person who funded this operation. And I kill them. All of them, in their homes, in front of their families." Ethan's voice was utterly cold. "I become the monster you're afraid I am. And I don't stop until the Iron Valley Development Company is a memory and a warning." Hardwick's face had gone pale. "You're bluffing. Am I? You read my file. You know what I'm capable of. You want to bet your life, bet your daughter's life, that I won't do exactly what I'm promising." Silence. The fire roared behind them, eating through the saloon like a hungry beast. "How do I know you won't kill me anyway?" Hardwick asked. "The moment I turn my back? You don't. But here's what I know. You're a businessman. Businessmen understand cost-benefit analysis. Right now, the cost of staying in Iron Hollow is your life. Maybe your daughter's life. The benefit is what? Money? Control of a water source in the middle of nowhere? Ethan leaned closer. Is it worth it? Hardwick was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he shook his head. No, he said quietly. It's not. Then we're done here. Ethan stepped aside, let Hardwick move past him toward the door. The older man paused on the threshold, looked back. You could have killed me, he said. Why didn't you? Ethan thought about Sarah, about the promise he'd made her, about the man he'd been trying to become for 4 years. Because I have children, he said finally, and I want them to have a father who's more than just good at killing. Hardwick nodded slowly, something like respect flickering across his face. Then he was gone, disappearing into the night. Ethan stood alone in the burning saloon, smoke stinging his eyes, heat pressing against his back. He should leave. The building was coming down. But for a moment, he couldn't move, couldn't process what he'd just done. He'd let Hardwick live. Had it been the right choice? The smart choice? Or had he just made a fatal mistake? A beam crashed down behind him, showering sparks. Ethan moved then, heading for the door, stepping over bodies and debris. Outside, the street was chaos. Men running, shouting, trying to organize. The fire had spread to the building next door, and someone was yelling about the general store, about Margaret. Ethan's blood went cold. He ran. Margaret's store was 2 buildings down from the saloon, close enough that embers were already landing on its roof. Through the front window, Ethan could see movement. Margaret, trying to save her inventory, loading things into crates. Margaret, he shouted, hitting the door. Get out! Now! She looked up, saw him, shook her head. This is everything I have, Ethan. I can't. It's just things. Move! Tom's in the back, still recovering. I can't leave him. Ethan cursed, pushed past her to the back room. Tom was there, awake but barely, his face pale and sweating. He tried to stand when he saw Ethan. Easy, Ethan said, getting an arm under him. I've got you. The fire? I know. We're leaving. He half carried, half dragged Tom toward the front. Margaret was still trying to save her store, grabbing ledgers and cash boxes. Margaret, now! Ethan shouted. She finally moved, following them out into the street just as the saloon's roof collapsed with a roar that shook the ground. Embers flew everywhere, landing on buildings, on grass, on anything that would burn. Iron Hollow was dying. Ethan got Tom and Margaret to safety, left them with some townspeople who were forming a bucket brigade. Then he stood back, watching the town burn, feeling the heat on his face and the weight of what he'd done settling on his shoulders. He'd started this. Come to town with violence and fire. And now innocent people were losing their homes, their livelihoods, their futures. Was this victory? Was this justice? Or had he just become another kind of monster? Vance! He turned. A deputy, one of Wade's men, was running toward him, gun drawn. The man's face was twisted with rage and grief. You killed the sheriff. You killed... Ethan's hand moved without thought, his revolver coming up, finger tightening on the trigger. Then he stopped. The deputy was maybe 20, young, scared, probably joined Wade's force because it was a job, not because he was corrupt, just a kid trying to survive. Just like Ben. Ethan lowered his gun. Go home, he said quietly. You murdered. Wade made his choice. He took Hardwick's money, sold out this town. That's on him. Ethan's voice was tired. But you don't have to make the same choice. You can walk away. Live. Start over somewhere that doesn't burn people out of their homes. The deputy's gun wavered. Tears were streaming down his face. Wade was teaching me, said I could make something of myself. Then prove him right. Be better than he was. For a long moment they stood there, guns pointed at each other, the fire roaring behind them. Then the deputy's weapon dropped, and he turned and ran. Ethan watched him go, feeling older than his years. Around him, Iron Hollow burned. The saloon was gone. 2 other buildings were engulfed. The bucket brigade was losing ground, and people were starting to evacuate, grabbing what they could and running. By morning, half the town would be ash. And it was Ethan's fault. He found his horse and rode out, leaving the flames behind. But he couldn't outrun the guilt, couldn't escape the knowledge that he'd crossed a line tonight. Maybe not by killing Hardwick, he hadn't done that, but by coming here, by starting this fire, by letting violence be his first answer instead of his last. Sarah would have been ashamed of him. He was ashamed of himself. The ride back to Frank's place felt endless. Dawn was breaking when he finally arrived, the sky lightening to gray, the valley emerging from darkness like a painting developing. They were waiting for him. Frank, Marcus, the others, and Lena and Ben, their faces tight with worry that melted into relief when they saw him. "Dad!" Lena ran to him as he dismounted. "We heard explosions, saw the fire. I'm fine." "Did you—" She stopped, reading his face. "Hardwick?" "Alive. I let him go." Shocked silence. Frank recovered first. "You let him go? After everything?" "I made him a deal. He leaves, or I hunt down everyone connected to his company and kill them." "He chose to leave." "You believe him?" "I believe he's smart enough to know when he's beaten, and scared enough to stay that way." Ethan rubbed his face, exhaustion hitting him like a wave. "The town's burning. Half of it, anyway. People lost homes, businesses, because of me. Because of him," Frank corrected. "This started with Hardwick, with the company. You just finished it. Did I, or did I just make it worse?" No one had an answer for that. Ben stepped forward. "What happens now?" "Good question." Ethan looked at his son, at his daughter, at the valley spreading out around them in the morning light, scarred, burned, but still there, still free. "Now we rebuild," he said. "We help the people who lost homes. We repair what we can. We try to make this valley into something worth the price we paid for it." "And the company?" "I don't know. If Hardwick keeps his word, they'll withdraw. If he doesn't—" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we deal with that when it comes." They spent the day in exhausted preparation, half expecting company soldiers to come riding over the ridge. But the valley stayed quiet. No riders, no threats, just silence and the distant smell of smoke. That evening, a lone horseman appeared. Not company. Margaret Harper, riding slowly, her face streaked with soot and tears. "The town," she said without preamble. "Half of it's gone. Saloon, mining office, 2 other buildings. My store's damaged but standing." "Margaret, I'm sorry." "Don't." She held up a hand. "Don't apologize. That fire saved lives. Hardwick's men scattered. Most of them left town this morning. Wade's deputies quit. The company headquarters is ash." She climbed down from her horse, stood facing Ethan. "It's over, Ethan. You won." "Doesn't feel like winning." "It never does. But we're free. That's what matters." "At what cost?" "Less than if we'd done nothing. Less than if we'd let them take everything." Margaret's voice was firm. "You did what needed doing. Now stop punishing yourself for it." Ethan wanted to argue. Wanted to list all the things he'd done wrong, all the lines he'd crossed, all the ways he'd failed to be the man Sarah wanted him to be. But maybe that was the point. Maybe he couldn't be that man. Not in this world. Not in this valley. Maybe the best he could do was be the man his children needed. The one who protected them, even when it cost him pieces of his soul. That night, they got word from town. Hardwick had left on the evening train, heading east. His remaining men were packing up, abandoning the valley. The 50 reinforcements had been recalled before they even arrived. The company cutting its losses, writing off Iron Hollow as a bad investment. It was over. The valley was free. And Ethan Vance sat on Frank's porch, staring at the stars, wondering why victory felt so much like defeat. Lena found him there an hour later. She sat beside him in silence, the way she used to when she was little and just wanted to be near him. "You're thinking about Mom," she said finally. "Always." "She'd be proud of you." "No, she wouldn't. She hated violence, hated what the war did to me. She hated what it cost you. That's different." Lena pulled her knees up, wrapped her arms around them. "But she also knew who you were, what you were capable of, and she married you anyway, stayed with you, had children with you. That was before—" "Before what? Before you proved you'd do anything to protect us? Before you showed you were willing to sacrifice everything to keep us safe?" Lena turned to look at him, and in the moonlight she looked so much like Sarah it hurt. "Mom knew you were a fighter, Dad. She just wanted you to fight for the right things. For family, for home, for people who couldn't fight for themselves. I killed people, Lena, burned a town, threatened to murder investors in their homes. You stopped a company from stealing our valley. You kept families from being driven off their land. You gave people hope when all they had was fear. She leaned against his shoulder. Maybe the methods were harsh. Maybe you did things you'll regret. But the result, people being free, being safe, Mom would have wanted that. Ethan was quiet for a long time. Then, when did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. They sat in comfortable silence, father and daughter, watching the stars wheel overhead. Somewhere out there, Hardwick was running. The company was retreating. The valley was healing. And Ethan Vance was learning that sometimes the hardest battles weren't fought with guns and fire. They were fought with yourself, with the choices you made and the man you became because of them. He'd never be the man Sarah fell in love with. That man had died in the war, buried under too many bodies and too many compromises. But maybe, just maybe, he could be the man his children needed. The man who'd fight for them, protect them, teach them to survive in a world that didn't give mercy to the weak. And in that, perhaps, he could find something like peace. The ghost could rest. For now. 3 days later, a telegram arrived at what remained of the Iron Hollow telegraph office. It was addressed to Ethan Vance, delivered by a nervous operator who'd heard the stories. Ethan opened it with steady hands, read the brief message. Stop. Terms accepted. Stop. Company withdrawing all claims to Iron Hollow Valley. Stop. You were right. Stop. Cost too high. Stop. Hardwick. Ethan stared at the paper for a long moment. Then he handed it to Frank, who read it and let out a long, slow breath. It's really over, the old man said. It's really over. Word spread through the valley like wildfire. The company was gone. The valley was theirs again. Free. Safe. People celebrated. There was drinking, dancing, laughter for the first time in months. Even in the burned sections of Iron Hollow, there was joy. But Ethan didn't celebrate. He went back to his land, to the ruins of his home, and started rebuilding. Lena and Ben worked beside him, the three of them hauling timber and driving nails in the place where they'd nearly died, building something new from the ashes of the old. It would take time. The house would never be what it was. The valley would carry scars for years. But it was theirs, and that was enough. One evening, as the sun set over Iron Hollow Valley, painting the ridges in gold and red, Ben paused in his work and looked at his father. Do you think it's over? He asked. Really over. Ethan drove a nail home, tested the beam, found it solid. For now. But someday someone else will come. Someone else will want what we have. That's the world. That's how it works. Ethan met his son's eyes. But when they come, we'll be ready. We'll fight and we'll win because this valley, this home, is worth fighting for. Ben nodded slowly. Will you teach me? What you know. How to fight like you do. Ethan thought about it. About passing on skills born in violence, teaching his son to kill, turning him into something Sarah would have hated. But he also thought about the alternative. About his children being helpless when the next threat came. About them dying because he'd tried to protect them from harsh truths. Yes, he said finally. I'll teach you. Both of you, if Lena still wants to learn. She does. Then we start tomorrow. But Ben, Ethan gripped his son's shoulder. The things I'm going to teach you, they're not for glory. They're not to make you feel powerful. They're tools, dangerous tools. You use them only when you have to, only to protect what matters. Understand? I understand. Ethan hoped that was true, hoped his children could learn to fight without becoming what he'd been, without losing themselves to the violence. But hope was all he had. That and the determination to make sure they never had to face what he'd faced alone. The valley darkened as night fell. In the distance, lights flickered in what remained of Iron Hollow. People finding their way. Rebuilding. Surviving. Ethan hammered the last nail of the day, set down his tools, and looked at what they'd built. Not much yet. Just the frame of a new beginning. But it was a start. And sometimes a start was all you needed. Somewhere in the ruins of his old life, the ghost stirred. Not dead. Never truly dead. Just resting. Waiting for the day it would be needed again. Because in Iron Hollow Valley, peace was always temporary, but so was defeat. And Ethan Vance, farmer, father, ghost, would be ready when the darkness came calling again. He'd make sure of it. The framework of the new house rose slowly over the following weeks, timber by timber, nail by nail. Ethan worked alongside his children every day, teaching them not just carpentry, but patience, precision, the value of building something meant to last. The valley watched their progress with quiet approval, seeing in their labor a symbol of resilience that Iron Hollow desperately needed. But symbols, Ethan knew, were fragile things. And the valley's peace was more fragile than most people wanted to admit. It was Marcus Brennan who brought the news that shattered the illusion. He rode up on a Thursday afternoon, his face grave, a newspaper clutched in his hand. Ethan was on the roof, fitting shingles, when he saw Marcus approaching. Something in the man's posture made Ethan's instincts wake up. "Ethan," Marcus called, "we need to talk, now." Ethan climbed down, wiped sweat from his face. "What's wrong?" Marcus handed him the newspaper, 3 days old, from the territorial capital. Page 4. Bottom. Ethan found the article. It was small, easy to miss if you weren't looking, but the headline made his blood run cold. Iron Valley Development President found dead. He read quickly. Marcus Hardwick, president of the Iron Valley Development Company, had been found shot to death in his Boston hotel room 2 weeks ago. The killer was unknown. Robbery was suspected, though nothing appeared to have been taken. Police were investigating. "It gets worse," Marcus said quietly. "Keep reading." Ethan's eyes found the next paragraph. Gerald Stockton, Hardwick's associate, had been killed in a stagecoach accident outside Denver 5 days after Hardwick's death, and 3 of the company's major investors had died in various incidents over the past month, 1 in a house fire, 2 in what authorities called unfortunate accidents. Too many deaths, too much coincidence. "Someone's cleaning house," Ethan said. "That's what I thought. But here's the thing," Marcus pointed to the final paragraph. "That deputy, Wade's deputy, the young one who ran off the night of the fire, he turned up in the Capitol last week, started telling stories about corruption, about the company, about me, about all of us, but especially you." Marcus's voice dropped. "He told the territorial marshal that you murdered Wade in cold blood, that you burned the saloon, that you threatened to hunt down and kill company investors." Ethan felt something cold settle in his gut. "And now those investors are dead." "Yeah." They stood in silence, the implications settling around them like falling snow. Someone was killing the company's leadership, and the timing, the method, the brutality, it all pointed in one direction, toward the ghost, toward Ethan. "I didn't do this," Ethan said. "Marcus, I swear. I know. You've been here, building. We've all seen you." Marcus's face was troubled. "But the marshal doesn't know that. And with that deputy's testimony, with these deaths, Ethan, they're going to come for you. They're going to think you did exactly what you threatened to do." "Who's killing them then?" "I don't know, but someone wants you to take the blame." Ethan's mind raced, sorting through possibilities. Someone with access to the company's leadership. Someone with the skills to make murders look like accidents. Someone who benefited from both the company's destruction and Ethan's downfall. The answer came like a thunderclap. "Cole," he breathed. "Cole's dead." "You killed him." "No, I wounded him. Threw a knife into his throat, but..." Ethan's eyes widened. "I didn't stay to make sure. I assumed he was dead, but what if he wasn't? What if he survived?" Marcus looked skeptical. "That was a killing blow. Nobody walks away from that. Cole was special operations, same as me. We're trained to survive things that should kill us." Ethan was pacing now, pieces falling into place. He had skills, resources, and a reason to hate both the company and me. Why would he hate the company? They employed him. Because they failed him, left him for dead, didn't come back for him when I attacked the mining office. Ethan's voice was grim. Men like Cole. Men like I used to be. We don't forget things like that. We don't forgive. So he's what? Killing off the company's leadership for revenge and framing you at the same time. 2 birds, 1 stone. He destroys the people who betrayed him and sets me up to hang for it. Perfect revenge. That's... Marcus struggled for words. That's insane. That's survival. That's how men like us think when we've got nothing left to lose. A new voice spoke from behind them. Then you'd better start thinking like him again, because he's coming for you next. They spun. Sheriff Wade's deputy, the young one Ethan had let go, stood 20 feet away, his hands raised and empty. He looked older than he had that night, harder, like he'd aged years and weeks. "Don't shoot," the deputy said quickly. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to warn you." Ethan's hand had already moved to his gun. "You're the one who went to the marshal, told them I was a murderer." "Because I thought you were. I thought—" The deputy's voice cracked. "Wade was teaching me. He was corrupt, yeah, but he was also the closest thing to a father I had. And you killed him." "He drew on me first. I know that now. I've had time to think, to remember." The deputy took a cautious step forward. "The night of the fire, after you let me go, I started asking questions about the company, about what they'd done, about who Wade really was working for, and I realized—" He swallowed hard. "I realized you were right. He'd sold us out, sold the whole valley out. So why tell the marshal I was a killer?" "Because I was angry, hurt, needed someone to blame." The deputy's shoulders sagged. "But then people started dying, the company people, and I heard things, rumors, about a man matching Cole's description seen in Boston, in Denver, near the places where the investors died." Ethan exchanged a glance with Marcus. "Cole's alive. More than alive. He's hunting. And he left a message for you." The deputy pulled a folded paper from his pocket, tossed it to Ethan. Ethan unfolded it. The handwriting was neat, precise, military. "Vance, you made me a ghost too. Now ghosts hunt each other. Iron Hollow, 3 days. Finish what we started. Cole." "3 days," Marcus said. "That's tomorrow," Ethan finished. The paper was dated 4 days ago. "He's already here." As if summoned by his name, a rifle shot cracked across the valley. Ethan's instincts took over. He dove, pulling Marcus down with him. The deputy hit the ground a second later. The bullet whined past where they'd been standing, buried itself in the timber frame behind them. "Where?" Marcus shouted. Ethan was already scanning the ridgeline. There, a glint of metal, maybe 400 yards out. Long shot, professional shot, Cole's shot. "In the house," Ethan barked. "Now!" They scrambled for cover as another round kicked up dirt beside Marcus. Inside the partial structure, pressed against timber that wouldn't stop a determined bullet, Ethan's mind raced. Cole had the high ground, the range, the initiative, everything Ethan had taught his wartime targets not to give him. This wasn't going to be a fair fight. It was going to be an execution. Unless Ethan changed the game. "Marcus, take the deputy and ride for Frank's place, fast. Don't stop. Don't look back." "What about you?" "I'm going to give Cole what he wants." "A fight? That's suicide." "No, a conversation." Ethan checked his weapons, his face set. "Cole doesn't just want me dead. He wants me to know why. Wants me to understand what I cost him. That's why he sent the message. Why he's not just shooting through these walls." "You're guessing." "I'm right. Now go." Marcus hesitated, then nodded. He and the deputy ran for their horses while Ethan provided covering fire. 3 shots aimed at the ridgeline, not to hit, but to keep Cole's head down. They made it. Disappeared over the rise heading north, safe. Ethan was alone. He stepped out of the partial house, hands visible and away from his weapons. The valley was silent except for wind through grass and the distant call of a hawk. "Cole," he shouted. "You wanted to talk? Let's talk." Silence. Then, faintly, a voice from the ridge. "Walk toward me. Slow. Keep your hands where I can see them." Ethan walked. Each step measured, controlled, his eyes on the ridgeline where Cole waited. This was how it had been in the war. 2 professionals, 2 predators, circling each other with death in the balance. Except this time, Ethan wasn't sure he wanted to win. He was tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of being the ghost. Tired of carrying the weight of all the lives he'd taken and all the prices he'd paid. Maybe Cole doing what Cole came to do would be a mercy. The thought surprised him, but he didn't stop walking. He found Cole sitting on a flat rock, rifle across his knees, a bandage around his throat where Ethan's knife had found home. The big man looked thinner, harder, like he'd been whittled down to nothing but purpose and pain. "Close enough," Cole said when Ethan was 20 feet away. His voice was rough, damaged. The knife had done more harm than Ethan realized. Ethan stopped. You survived. Barely. Spent 2 weeks in Margaret Harper's back room, bleeding and choking. She saved my life. Cole's smile was bitter. Didn't tell anyone I was there, just patched me up and let me go. Said everyone deserved a second chance. Margaret's good people, better than either of us deserve. Cole shifted and Ethan saw the pain in his movement. You came alone, stupid or brave? Both seems to be my specialty. Mine too. Cole's hand rested on his rifle, not threatening but ready. You know why I'm here. Revenge for what I did to you, what the company did to you, partially. But it's more than that. Cole's eyes were hollow, haunted. When you threw that knife, when I felt it go in, I had a moment of clarity. Realized I'd been working for people who didn't give a damn about me, who'd have left me to die in that office without a second thought. And I realized you'd tried to warn me. When? The store, when we first met. You looked at me and I saw recognition, not fear. Recognition. You knew what I was, what I'd been, and you stepped aside, gave me a chance to walk away. Ethan remembered. The moment their eyes had met. The silent acknowledgement between two men who'd walked the same dark roads. You didn't take it, Ethan said. No. And that's on me. Cole's jaw tightened. But the company, Hardwick, Stockton, all of them, they're on me too. I worked for them, enforced for them, hurt people for them. And when I finally saw what they really were, when I understood the damage we'd done, you decided to balance the scales. I decided to finish what they started. They wanted to take the valley by force. I gave them force, just not the kind they expected. Cole's smile was sharp and terrible. And I made sure you'd take the blame. 2 birds, like you always taught us. Eliminate the enemy and create a diversion. I never taught you that. You never taught me directly, but I read your file, studied your methods. You were legendary in the Scouts. The ghost who killed 17 Confederate officers and made it look like accidents, coincidences, acts of God. Cole leaned forward. I learned from the best. Ethan felt sick. I never wanted students. Too bad. You got one anyway. And now he's going to kill you, complete the circle, eliminate the last person who knows what I've become. The deputy knows. Marcus knows. They suspect. They don't know. You're the only one who can prove it. The only one who understands how a ghost operates. Cole stood, rifle coming up. So you have to die, and I have to be the one to do it. Professional respect and all that. Ethan didn't reach for his gun. If you're going to kill me, at least tell me one thing first. Why frame me? Why not just disappear? Because you let Hardwick live. Cole's voice was hard. You had him. Had the shot. Had every reason to pull the trigger. And you didn't. You let him walk away because of some misguided nobility. I let him walk because I didn't want to be a murderer anymore. And look how that worked out. He went back east and started planning his return. Started recruiting that 50-man force. Started talking about making Iron Hollow an example. Cole's finger moved to the trigger. You showed mercy. I finished what you started. And now you get to pay for being soft. The rifle came up, centered on Ethan's chest. Point-blank range. No missing. No surviving. Ethan looked at the barrel and felt surprisingly calm. You're wrong about one thing. What's that? I wasn't being soft. I was being smart. Hardwick alive and scared was better than Hardwick dead and martyred. His investors would have sent someone worse. Someone like you. Ethan met Cole's eyes. I made a tactical decision. You made it personal. That's the difference between us. Cole's finger tightened on the trigger. Any last words? Yeah. Look behind you. That's the oldest trick. It's not a trick. Cole glanced back, just a flicker, and saw Lena. She was 30 yards up the ridge, her mother's rifle aimed steady at Cole's head. Ben was beside her, similarly armed. Cole's laugh was bitter. Your children, of course. Did you teach them to shoot too? To kill? I taught them to protect what matters. Right now, that's me. So we have a standoff. I shoot you, they shoot me. Mutual destruction. No. You shoot me, they kill you. But you don't have to shoot me. You can walk away, disappear. Become the ghost for real. Nobody needs to die today. Except I've already killed 6 people. There's no walking away from that. There's always a choice, Cole. Right up until there isn't. For a long moment, they stood frozen. Cole's rifle on Ethan. Lena and Ben's rifles on Cole. The valley holding its breath. Then Cole lowered his weapon. I'm tired, he said quietly. Tired of killing. Tired of running. Tired of being the monster. I know the feeling. What do I do? Where do I go? The law is going to come eventually. They'll figure out it was me. And when they do, then you run. You go somewhere they'll never find you. Mexico, Canada, somewhere you can start over. Ethan took a step closer. Or you stay. You face what you've done. You take the consequences. Either way, it's your choice. Not mine. Not the company's. Yours. Cole's eyes were wet. I don't deserve a choice. None of us deserve anything. We just get to decide what we do with what we're given. The rifle slipped from Cole's hands, fell to the ground. The big man sank to his knees, his face in his hands, and Ethan saw him for what he really was. Not a monster, not a ghost, just a broken man who'd let his pain turn him into something he hated, just like Ethan had almost become. Ethan waved to Lena and Ben. They lowered their rifles, came down the ridge cautiously. When they reached him, Lena's voice was shaking. Dad, we heard the shots, thought you were… I'm fine, thanks to you two. What do we do with him? Ben asked, looking at Cole's collapsed form. Good question. Ethan looked at Cole, at the man who'd killed 6 people, framed him for murder, come here to end his life. The smart thing would be to turn him over to the law, let justice take its course. But Ethan had learned that justice and law weren't always the same thing. Cole, he said quietly, look at me. The big man raised his head. His face was streaked with tears, his throat bandage soaked with blood from talking too much. You have until sunset, Ethan said. Take a horse. Ride north. Don't stop until you're across the border, and don't ever come back to this valley. You do, and I won't hesitate next time. Why? Cole's voice was broken. Why give me this? Because someone gave it to me once, a chance to walk away from what I was, to start over. I squandered it for 4 years, but I got it nonetheless. Ethan offered his hand. Don't waste yours. Cole stared at the offered hand like it was a miracle. Then he took it, let Ethan pull him to his feet. I don't deserve this. Probably not, but take it anyway. Cole stumbled away, retrieved his horse from where it was hidden, and rode north without looking back. They watched him go, 3 Vances standing together until he disappeared over the ridge. We just let a murderer go, Ben said. It wasn't quite an accusation, but close. We let a broken man have a second chance, Ethan corrected. There's a difference. Is there? He killed 6 people, tried to kill you, and I killed 3 in one night. Does that make me a murderer or a defender? Where's the line, Ben? When does protection become vengeance? When does justice become murder? Ethan put his hand on his son's shoulder. I don't have those answers. I just know that if we kill everyone who's done wrong, pretty soon there's nobody left. Sometimes mercy is harder than violence. And sometimes it's the right choice, even when it doesn't feel like it. Lena spoke up. What about the marshal? The deputy said they're looking for you. Let them look. Cole's gone. The real killer is gone. Eventually they'll figure it out, or they won't. Either way, I'm not running anymore. This is my valley, my home. If they want me, they know where to find me. And if they come to arrest you, Ethan smiled without humor, then I'll deal with it. But I'm done running from who I am, done pretending I'm something I'm not. He looked at his children. I'm a farmer, a father, and when I have to be, I'm a fighter. That's the truth, and I'm going to live with that truth instead of hiding from it. They walked back to the house together, 3 survivors of a war that had almost consumed them. The framework waited, patient and incomplete. There was still so much work to do, but they had time now. The valley was quiet. The threats had passed. For the moment, at least, they were free. The weeks that followed brought change to Iron Hollow. The territorial marshal did come, investigated Wade's death and the fire, interviewed witnesses. But the deputy, whose name was Thomas Riley, told a different story than the one he'd told before. Told about company corruption, about Wade's complicity, about Ethan acting in self-defense. The marshal was skeptical, but without Cole to blame, without clear evidence of murder, and with the entire valley vouching for Ethan's presence during the time of the investor killings, there wasn't much to prosecute. The case was closed as unsolved. The company's collapse was attributed to internal corruption and unfortunate accidents, and Ethan Vance was left alone. Iron Hollow rebuilt slowly. The burned buildings were cleared, new structures raised. Margaret expanded her store. New families moved in, attracted by cheap land and stories of a valley that had stood against corporate greed and won. The story grew in the telling, as stories do. Ethan became a legend, the quiet farmer who'd turned into a one-man army, who'd driven out the company with nothing but courage and skill. He hated the legend, but he understood its value. Sometimes people needed heroes, even flawed ones, especially flawed ones. Heroes who were perfect were too distant to believe in. Heroes who bled and doubted and made mistakes. Those were the ones that gave people hope. 6 months after Cole disappeared, a letter arrived. No return address. Just a single page. Vance. I made it. Found work on a ranch in Alberta. Nobody knows me here. Nobody asks questions. I think about what you said. About choices. About second chances. I'm trying. It's hard. But I'm trying. Thank you. A ghost. Ethan burned the letter after reading it. No evidence, no connection, just a moment of closure between two men who'd walked similar paths and found different ends. He never told anyone about it. Some things were meant to stay buried. The new house was completed in early spring, 8 months after the fire. It wasn't as large as the old one, wasn't as fancy. But it was solid, built to last, and it was theirs. They moved in on a Sunday, carrying their few possessions through the door Sarah had never walked through. Ethan felt her absence like a wound that wouldn't heal, but he also felt something else. Pride, maybe. Or hope. Or just the simple satisfaction of having built something that would outlast him. That night, after Ben had gone to bed, Ethan and Lena sat on the new porch, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. Mom would have liked this, Lena said quietly. The house? All of it. The valley being free, us being safe, you being... She struggled for words. You being okay with who you are. I'm not sure I'm okay with it. But you're not running from it anymore. That's progress. Ethan smiled. When did you get so smart? I had good teachers. Mom taught me to be kind. You taught me to be strong. Your mother was stronger than I'll ever be. Different kinds of strength. She was strong in the light. You're strong in the dark. Lena leaned against his shoulder. The valley needs both kinds. I think maybe people do too. They sat in comfortable silence, father and daughter, watching the night deepen. Somewhere out there, Cole was building a new life. Hardwick's company was ashes. The valley was free. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was theirs. And that was enough. Years later, when Ben and Lena had children of their own, they would tell them the story of the ghost of Iron Hollow, about the quiet farmer who became a legend, about the night the valley burned and rose from its ashes stronger than before. They didn't tell the whole truth, didn't talk about the blood and fear and moral compromises, didn't mention the nightmares that still woke their father sometimes, or the way he'd stand on the porch at midnight watching for threats that never came. Those parts weren't for stories. Those parts were private, real. But they told enough. Told about courage, about standing up to power when power was wrong, about protecting what mattered no matter the cost. And every generation that grew up in Iron Hollow Valley learned the same lesson, that freedom isn't given, it's earned, that safety is temporary and must be defended, that sometimes good people have to do hard things to protect the ones they love. Ethan Vance lived another 30 years in that valley, watched his children grow, marry, have families of their own. Watched Iron Hollow become a real town, with a proper school and a legitimate sheriff, and no company ever tried to take it again. The legend of the ghost kept it safe. People knew better than to push a valley that had produced a man like Vance. And if sometimes, in the dark hours before dawn, Ethan would take out the wooden box and look at the uniform and weapons inside, well, that was his business. The ghost was sleeping. But it was never truly gone, because some things, once awakened, never fully rest. On his last day, surrounded by family, Ethan Vance closed his eyes for the final time with the sun setting over Iron Hollow Valley. the land he'd fought for, the home he'd bled for, the future he'd killed for. His last words were quiet, meant only for Lena, who sat holding his hand. Tell them I tried. Tell them I wasn't perfect. But tell them I tried. I will, Dad. And tell them. His voice faded, then strengthened. Tell them the valley is worth it, always worth it. Then he was gone, leaving behind a legacy written in timber and blood, in freedom and sacrifice, in all the complicated truths that made up a life lived on the edge between darkness and light. The valley remembered him, not as a hero, not as a monster, but as a man who'd done what needed doing and lived with the consequences. Sometimes that's all anyone can hope to be. The valley endures. The story continues. And somewhere in the dark, when threats arise, people still whisper about the ghost of Iron Hollow. Waiting, watching, ready. Because some protectors never truly die. They just become part of the land they fought to save. And Iron Hollow Valley, won in blood and held in determination, stands free. Forever.